You don't seem to want to accept the fact that you're dealing with someone who's an expert in guerrilla warfare, with a man who's best with guns and knives with his bare hands, a man who's been trained to ignore pain, ignore weather, to live off the land, to eat things that would make a billy goat puke. In Vietnam, his job was to dispose of enemy personnel, to kill, period, win by attrition. Well, Rambo was the best.
Okay, Colonel, now you got us all scared to death. What do you and the Special Forces think I ought to do about your psycho out there?
Let him go.
What?
For now, defuse the whole situation, defuse him, provide a little gap and let him slip through it. Then put out a nationwide APB. In a couple weeks, you'll pick him up in Seattle or someplace working in a car wash. There will be no fight and no one else will get hurt.
I do my own work, and I don't figure the best way to do that is to close my eyes and hope he gets picked up in Seattle.
Well, if you send your people in there after him, they'll get killed.
You know, we're just a small hick town sheriff's department, Colonel, but we're expected to do our duty just like our heroes in the Special Forces.
In the Special Forces, we teach our people to stay alive in the line of duty.
Well, shit, I never thought of that.
You want a war you can't win?
Are you telling me the 200 men against your boy is a no-win situation?
You send that many, don't forget one thing.
What?
A good supply of body bags. Vietnam veteran and drifter John Rambo wanders into a small Washington town in search of an old friend, but is met with intolerance and brutality by the local sheriff, Will Teasel. When Teasel and his deputies restrain and shave Rambo, he flashes back to his time as a prisoner of war and unleashes his fury on the officers. He narrowly escapes the manhunt, but it will take his former commander to save the hunter from the hunted. Welcome to another feature presentation of Midnight Double Feature, and on this episode, we'll be covering 1982's First Blood, directed by Ted Kotcheff. It's a long road when you're on your own. Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome back. Tonight we're going to be talking about, tonight, whenever, tomorrow, forever. We're going to be talking about First Blood right here on Midnight Double Feature. Always with me, my friend, my co-pilot, my comrade, Zoheb Ali. How are you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good. Oh, I'm doing good. I'm good, dude. I'm good, dude. I'm good. Holy shit, I was just like in the middle of reading something and you introduced me and I was like, oh, okay. No, I'm good, dude. Like, I'm fucking virus free. I'm fine. I'm all good. I'm hoping you are virus free as well because this shit doesn't transmit over the air. So, we're safe. I do want to just quickly apologize to our listeners. We're coming at you with Rambo a week late, only just because, I had some personal issues last week and some family issues. So I was the reason we had to delay it. I know that a few of you guys were like really keen for Rambo last week, but here you go. And you don't get to tell us when you get fucking episodes, all right? we released this shit for free, bitch.
Patrick Harrington.
Patrick Harrington. You can wait, you little bitch.
But yeah, I mean, hey, fucking better late than never, right? And here we are talking about First Blood. First time dipping our toe in Rambo, the franchise. And honestly, is this our first Stallone? Yeah. That's crazy. That's pretty
wild,
nuts.
Dude.
I mean, we've talked about Schwarzenegger and shit, but
I hate that you chose this. Okay, like only because I want to make fun of Sylvester Stallone so much. And I can't do that with this movie. I can't do that with this movie.
Now, and the thing that's interesting is we talked about Terminator. We did Die Hard. We don't really cover any Steven Seagal or JCVD movies. We're not really, I don't know. I'm not a big action movie guy. I'm not like one of those, I love Heat. I like a good heist movie, but I'm not like an action movie, Transformers, kind of the Expendables, like action movie type shit, maybe like the Transporter, at the most. That's about as actiony as I'll get. But before we get into all that, actually, let's just, you guys know the drill. Unless this is your first time tuning in, there is an E on this motherfucker for a reason. We're going to talk about the movie. We're going to break it down. We're going to spoil it. So if you don't want to, get this movie that's as old as the Michael Jackson Thriller album ruined for you, I guess you better tune it off now. And we'll be talking about the book a little bit and kind of breaking some things down. There's a little bit of spoilers for the book, just FYI. I like to drop that out there because it is very different from the movie. But guys, as always, you can find us on our socials. We're on Facebook at Midnight Double Feature. We're on Instagram at, guess what, Midnight Double Feature. We're on Twitter at MDF Pod. Shoot us an email, midnightdoublefeature@gmail.com. And also on Facebook, we have our group called The After Party. That group's been coming along slowly but surely lately, and I'm having a lot of fun in there. There's people posting stuff every day. And it's a lot of fun. You can find us in there and join, and everybody's invited. And also, please stop by, rate and review us on iTunes. I think we're still doing this, or has that closed? Yeah, okay, nope. So we're still doing it. Write a review, take a screenshot of it, do whatever. Get your photographic evidence to us at midnightdoublefeature@gmail.com, and we'll put your name in a little hat, little raffle, little lottery for you to have your own pick. So if you want us to cover something that we'd never fucking cover, like Steven Seagal or JCVD, so write a review, send it on in, and you'll be put into the prize drawing for that. But we've had a few responses so far, but hey, the more the merrier, absolutely. But now that that's out of the way, this was my pick. Obviously, I picked this. I enjoy this movie, but I want to hear your thoughts because we've never really talked about Stallone a lot. We've never really talked about Rambo. So, what's your, don't go into your whole fucking background with Stallone, but what's your experience with First Blood or the whole Rambo franchise or that whole thing?
Maybe I want to go into my background with Stallone. This is okay. I'm just gonna put this right on Front Street. This is the first time I've seen this movie.
God damn it!
First time I've seen this movie. I know. And look, to our frequent listeners, that might not be as big of a surprise. Basically, if a movie's made before I'm born, I haven't seen it. Take that as a general rule.
Basically,
other than Psycho, or something like that, But no, I do dive into old school movies here and there. But for me, I think the genre of movies that I dive in least before I was born, if that makes sense, is the action genre. I don't think, because action doesn't age very well, particularly. I'll get into this movie. I don't think this movie's... by the way, this movie's fucking great. I'm just gonna put that right there.
Yeah.
I don't want to make it sound like I'm trashing the movie right up here at the front, but... some parts of it hasn't aged well in terms of the action sequence and stuff. But that's only because technology's advanced so much and we're able to do so much more. Let's take the John Wick movies, for example, right? We're able to do so much more with action and tell paint a massive picture with action and movement than we were able to in 1982. Yeah, man. Look, Stallone is a guy that's he's borderline. How you talked about we don't talk about Steven Seagal and JCVD? He's borderline that for me. Very borderline. He kind of comes over to the Arnie phase where I'm just I love this dude, but at the same time, I haven't really seen too much of his stuff. First Stallone movie I saw was Judge Dredd, the old school Judge Dredd.
Throw down your weapons and prepare to be judged.
I am the law. Yeah,
I fucking love that line, though. The throw down your weapons. Dude, his voice is terrifying. If I heard that, Jesus fucking Christ, man.
Dude, physically, he's not a bad, choice for Judge Dredd. That movie was just not amazing, and the choices they made in that movie were not amazing.
Yeah.
But, physically, he suits the role. And I think we talked about this on the in the Dredd podcast.
That's right, yeah.
Nearly 2 fucking years ago, dude. We're coming up on our 2nd anniversary, by the way.
Yeah.
Holy shit. But yeah, look, I've always liked Stallone, and I do think, especially in his later years now, that we're currently seeing him in, he's putting in damn good performances. The 2 Creed movies, man, he got nominated for the first Creed, and people think that he was actually going to win it at some point. He was actually really fantastic in that first Creed movie. My favorite movie of his that I've seen, and I've always been leading into leading into the Rocky franchise, sorry, the Rambo franchise in general, I've always been more of a Rocky fan. Like the first Rocky to me is one of the best movies ever made. I love that first Rocky movie, dude. I think Stallone he's just so genuine. He comes off, I don't know, because you think that he's maybe on the spectrum, right? Like that's
right.
Kind of like what he's doing.
That's what I like about this is that it's such a departure from that. You know, it's not the you know, idiot with a heart of gold and two, you know, lead hands like type thing. It's a bit of a departure, and I enjoy that. But no, you're totally right. Go on, sorry.
No. I mean, like I think Stallone does a really good job, like when he's turning things up like that. And yeah, well, look, dude, I've only seen 2 Rambo movies in my life before I watched this one for the podcast, and they're not the good ones. I saw Last Blood, which is the most recent one that came out last year, and I saw I think it was 2009's Rambo. That was the one where he's in the forest in Burma.
Yeah, that one's pretty good.
Look, it's okay. Have you watched that recently?
No, I mean, honestly, I think it goes this one, then that one, then like 3 and 2. You know, if you put a gun to my head.
Right, I haven't seen 3 or 2, so I can't really like comment on that. But yeah, sorry, that was 2008. That one was super fucking violent, dude. That one was just like,
good God, dude.
I'm 15 years old and I'm watching that movie and I'm just like he's literally like blowing people away with this like machine gun. Like that is at the back of the thing.
You know he directed that shit, right?
He did, yeah. He directed that one. And then like I think a couple of years later he directed The Expendables. And you know, like he's a decent director. He's kind of like he's an icon unto himself, right? Like he's Stallone. Like he's no one like. There's no one really to compare him to other than Arnold, but I think Arnold's different in the sense that like Arnold, you kind of get a sense that he's somewhat intelligent.
Well, and you know what, kind of watching him in this role, what it made me think of wouldn't have been awesome. And I love Robert Patrick as T-1000, but I also wouldn't have minded like Arnold. I think James Cameron said, you know, like the T-800 is the tank, the T-1000 is the Porsche. And I've always thought that, yeah, that's the difference between Schwarzenegger and Stallone. Like Schwarzenegger was so much bigger, but Stallone was just ripped, like insanely ripped. Like one set the standard for bulk and the other one set the standard for just like Rocky 4, Rambo 2, like that type of like, oh my God, you know. But then he could turn around and put on a bunch of weight to do a movie like Copland, which is really fucking good if you've never seen it. It's really under. Yeah, it's great. Yeah. It's great. It's great.
Yeah, like you know what? As I'm watching this movie, First Blood, that line from Tropic Thunder keeps bringing to mind. So it's like it's Robert Downey Jr. like talking to fucking Ben Stiller's character Tug Speedman, and he's like, you know, you're all shredded like a julienne salad, man. You look like him from Rambo Part 2. You know, in Part 1 he was cut, but he wasn't that cut. But like number 2, he came back and he was like shredded, and I'm just like, dude, that's all I could like think about. But yeah, look, I really fucking dig this movie, man. Like this is parts of this is aged really well, and parts of it hasn't. Like just kind of like minimal stuff hasn't. But in terms of like telling a story about, you know, post-traumatic stress disorder, and basically just this guy on the run who's just totally misunderstood. And you know, eventually, like I did some research into how he's portrayed in the book as well. In the book, apparently he's a bit more of a calculating kind of like killer. Like he's a little bit more ferocious. He's a little bit more violent. Like he's kind of like just killing people left, right, and center. And like, you know, this is, correct me if I'm wrong, Colin, by the way.
No, you're right. Yeah, he's just more unhinged. Yeah.
Yeah, he's more unhinged. And like, you know, the producers of this movie were just like, well, we can't really have that with the movie character that we have as our lead. So we kind of need to make him someone who's a bit more lost, you know, who it's kind of like, it's not exactly kill or be killed, but rather, you know, corner me and I'm going to have to fight my way out kind of situation, you know? But yeah, man, really dug this movie. Really keen to cover it. One of my favorite things about this movie is that it's an hour and a half.
Yeah, dude, I miss those. I was talking to somebody about that at work the other day. I was like, don't you miss you could go into a movie and like come out and the sun would still be up? Like, don't you miss that? But I mean, sure. I don't want to cut. Are you done there? I don't want to.
Yeah. Please.
No, okay, thank you. Okay. So my history with this was I was as a younger lad, I was like obsessed with Sylvester Stallone. Thought he was fucking amazing. Thought he was like my favorite actor for a long time, and I really, really, really dug Sylvester Stallone. My AOL Instant Messenger screen name, and this is the amount of the amount of heterosexual testosterone that is about to pour out of the sentence. Hold
on, wait, stop. Before you start, I just want to let you know, if any potential future employers listen to this podcast, you cannot use this against Colin.
Right. My AOL screen name was, and I thought it was actually really clever, Stallone Clone 123. And I was like, a 7th grade kid in the South who's like 6'4" and 235 pounds. Yeah, sure. Fuck it. He's definitely a Stallone clone. No, but I just fucking, dude, Rocky, Rambo, Over the Top, Judge Dredd, Demolition Man, fucking, what's
Cliffhanger.
Cliffhanger's fucking great. John Lithgow and Michael Rooker. It's holy shit, this movie is fantastic. And even some of his older stuff before Rocky, there's a movie called like Lords of the Flatbush. Yes, that's the real name of it.
Have you seen the Expendable movies?
No, my dad was a fan of those. I remember watching a little bit of one and being like, "Meh," it's cool seeing all those guys up there. It is. That's the whole hook.
That's the hook. Yeah, absolutely. I only asked because that second one is actually genuinely a fun thrill ride. Like, that movie knows exactly what it is, because the first one took itself way too seriously. And then they brought in Simon West, who directed Con Air, and it's like it's Con Air feels like it knows exactly what it is, and it's just fun from there. So if you do watch any of the Expendables films, I recommend that second one for sure.
Yeah, well, and mine kind of all started with Rocky. My brother bought, at the time, the only 5 Rocky movies there were. This would have been, late 90s, early 2000s, or mid 90s, all on like a VHS like box set. And it was just, awesome set. I remember us watching them and just being blown away. And as a kid, Rocky 4 was always my favorite, and I love that one. And I still hold a soft spot for that. But actually, my favorite, and no offense to I love Rocky 1. It's a great movie. I like Rocky 2 because the stakes are even higher, of like he's got this eye problem and now he's having a baby and he's married and it's like, take the stakes of Rocky 1 where he has nothing to lose and now he has everything to lose and it looks like he's going to lose it. And it's like, man, that is fucking great. I love the way they ramp that up. Almost the same story, but like somehow a totally different story through the stakes in Rocky 2. And he directed Rocky 2. And after the first Rocky came out, he just got so much clout, and it was really him writing on this that changed this whole movie around. I think there were like 16, 17 different copies of the script before it finally went to like whatever final draft it went to. It changed rights a few times between Warner Brothers, and then Carol Co came along and gave it to Ted Kotcheff. Yeah. Okay. And they gave it to him, and they kind of just said, "Hey, what do you want to do?" And it's like, it just seems like there's so many movies that are my favorite movies that I've heard somebody went to a director and was like, "You got free reign. What do you want to do?" And he was like, "I want to do First Blood." And they were like, "Okay, cool." And the director, Ted Kotcheff, he said, he would. Yeah. He said, never in my life has a production company ever since then or before, ever come up to me and said, "What movie do you want to direct?" And then I said, "Hey, I want to do First Blood. Why don't we ask Stallone?" And then Stallone was on within 24 hours. And
he's like, he was his first choice.
Right. He's like, we had a production, a director, a writer, and the star in 24 hours. He's like, that's unheard of. And a lot of people turn this down. Stallone's like, man, they went to De Niro, they went to Hackman, they went to everybody, but they went to like, what did he say? He's like, they went to like Free Willy and fucking Air Bud before they went to me. Like, he's like, and finally they're like, fuck it, let's give it to Sly. But, obviously this is based on the book. I haven't read it. I've always wanted to. It is on Audible, so I might just go ahead and scoop that up. I've been binging some Audible lately. Not a good time to listen to The Stand by Stephen King. I'm going to put that out there, by the way. Not a good time to listen to that. But the book, I really do want to check it out. I've heard it's really good. And David Morrell, he was a professor in a college, and he said he was teaching these young men who were coming back and, who had fought in Vietnam War, and they were having trouble with him being an authority figure because they're like, hey, we did, who the fuck are you? We're the ones going out, and they had resilience to him. They did not want him, as an authority figure. And it was these conversations after the class that actually led him to kind of what became of this book, and their frustrations and how they were being treated.
I read that, Morrell was told these stories about these guys would come back and, essentially they'd hear a fucking car backfire and they'd hit the deck, it's just total reflex shit like that.
Right. Well, it became such a phenomenon with Vietnam vets that PTSD was called Vietnam vet syndrome for a long time before it ever became PTSD. But the interesting thing, and this is just some production stuff, Kirk Douglas was the original Troutman, and you can find test shots of him, and they have posters made up because they said, hey, who the fuck is Stallone? Yeah, he did Rocky, and he even had Rocky. I think Rocky 2 was under his belt at this point, and Rocky 3 was about to come out. So he's, doing stuff, but at the same time, they wanted a double bill with Kirk Douglas, and they thought, hey, that's really going to, and in some countries it would say Kirk Douglas stars as Troutman in Rambo. It was kind of weird. They wanted to give him top billing, but he couldn't. But they said Kirk Douglas just showed up to set with a list of script changes, and they're like, Kirk, here's the script as it is, take it or leave it. And they said in 24 hours, they had Richard Crenna. And they were like, we were just dude, he's great, man. His delivery is fantastic. So
good, dude. Just before we move on from Stallone as well, I just want to point out that he's an Oscar winner at this point.
Yes.
Rocky won Best Picture. Dude, Rocky made for $1 million, grossed $225 million worldwide.
Yes, dude. The whole story of him writing that and living in a car, and they offered him up to $360,000, but he wouldn't take it because he couldn't be the lead. And it's holy shit. His whole story is just, and the fact that, why he's got the lip. I was reading about this when he was born, they had to use forceps to get his face out, and they pinched a bunch of nerves in his face. It's like a birth defect almost. And I was like, oh shit, but it's iconic. It's like the gap in Arnold's teeth. I was like, it's so it'd be weird if it wasn't there, but yeah, so obviously, like I was saying with Kirk Douglas, they ended up letting him go, and they said Stallone and him would laugh about it still. And R.I.P. by the way, just died not even 2 months ago. Kirk Douglas, he's 106 or something.
Dude, 103, Jesus. I think.
Man,
think about how old Michael Douglas is, right? Michael Douglas is old as shit, and then it's oh wait, your father's still alive. What? Excuse me?
That's fucking crazy, man. I had a grandmother who lived to be 99, and I was just blown away. I couldn't imagine her holding on for 7 more years. Jesus. So yeah, and Stallone said the first cut of this movie was 3 hours long. 3 fucking hours, and he had dialogue, and he had these really cheesy lines, and he and his agent tried to buy the negatives of the film to burn it and destroy it, because he was like, I thought I was just really going to put myself in the hole. I've been working so hard, and I've won this Oscar, and I'm doing Rocky, and then all of a sudden Rambo comes out, and it's maybe there's a reason why De Niro and Hackman and none of these people are fucking doing it. But ultimately, they really let Stallone, his writing is what kind of saved this. And they were like, what do you want to do to change this and fix this? And he goes, cut out all my dialogue. He's like, he's way too chatty. He needs to be quiet. He's an introverted person. He's suffering. And it just, how was that not on the table first thing? The strong, quiet character. His silence is what really kind of makes him not menacing, but it's gentle, but also what is he possible? What are his possibilities? I feel like he could really fuck some shit up, and that, the guy who talks the most in the room is usually the biggest pussy, so Rambo should be totally quiet because he's just the badass.
Yeah. Well, I think Stallone brings some of that from Rocky, right? Because Rocky he's a bit of a quiet loner, you know what I mean? But when you train him up, he's a fucking beast. He's a weapon, and his and he's someone who actually thinks a lot. Like, that's the thing about the Rambo character too. Like, although he's quiet as shit, come to find out that he's actually a genius in terms of like setting up all these traps and operating on like this like very military-esque kind of like situation. Like he's a character who, while quiet and while sort of like introverted and just is someone who is totally actually technically a genius.
Right. Well, I think he is supremely not underrated, but underestimated. I think that when you look at him, you wouldn't think this guy could eat shit that would make a billy goat puke and sew himself up and all this other. It's like, wow, he doesn't look like some big gnarly badass guy. And the thing I love about this movie is that this is a 1982 movie, and it's lucky enough to have been so early 80s that it's basically a 70s movie. This is drenched in like 70s feel, the cinematography, the sound, the acting, and everything. This doesn't look like the world of E.T. and Stranger Things. This looks like a film in the 77, 78. This doesn't feel like 82, 83. Yeah,
like Mad Max 1 kind of like type.
Yeah, exactly. And it's, if you put a gun to my head and you said that John Carpenter had been one of the people tossed around to direct this, I would totally believe it. There's parts of this movie, and I don't know why. I think it has something to do with the aspect ratio that Carpenter uses on stuff. I'm not 100% sure, and I don't want to be like talking out of term, but there are some staggeringly beautiful shots in this movie, and there's something about the way that it's filmed, the way that they capture people, like right from the waist up, and I was like, this feels like a Carpenter flick at some point.
I think that has something to do with like how long Kotcheff holds on things, like, you know what I mean, like how long he like keeps a static shot in terms of like just literally having one person in the frame or like a landscape in the frame. Like he doesn't cut away from things like as often. Like, for example, when he escapes a prison, like on the bike, and we see Teasel chasing him, like there are these like long ass shots where I'm expecting it to cut away because like some of these stunts are just like really, really awesomely executed. But he doesn't do that. He just holds on that shit, and it looks so real, so great. Yeah.
When and David Caruso, by the way, CSI Miami. Holy shit,
dude! I had to pause it. I was like, is that fucking Horatio Caine,
dude?
Who would have thunk it? Like this guy would have gone on to become one of the most cringiest TV characters of all time, but also one of the most iconic.
Dude, he's great in I think it's King of New York with Christopher Walken. We're doing that one day. It's really, really good.
Also, if you want to see a David Caruso movie that's actually like pretty solid, check out Session 9 if you haven't seen it.
I've heard is that like a horror movie?
Yeah, it's a horror thriller. It's like a psychological horror thriller. It's pretty decent. I haven't seen it in years. I was a kid when I watched it, so I'm not sure how it holds up, but that's my disclaimer.
Don't fucking pull a muscle backpedaling so hard. No, but when David Caruso grabs his dog tags and the police, they hold that shot for like 10 seconds of him just holding David. I was like, wow, this movie's patient, and it's patient at an hour and 30 minutes. What the fuck? Like, that's crazy, man. Like, from the time that he gets booked, from the time that he kind of does his breakout and shit, it's maybe 10, 20 minutes tops. But by the 26-minute mark, basically by the 30-minute mark, Galt is dead. And you're like, what the fuck? That is crazy how fast that moves. But, we got to talk about Jerry Goldsmith. We got to talk about that fucking dude.
We need to.
Oh, like, you are, and I no problem admitting this, you are notoriously better about looking up the music side of it than I am. And I think, in all honesty, I take that for granted, and I don't look into it as much as I should or as much as you do. But I'm sure you know of Jerry Goldsmith and know some of his shit, right?
Oh, dude, how could I not? I mean, Goldsmith, sadly passed away 2004, but man, like he just set the standard. Like Hans Zimmer has admitted to like Goldsmith being one of the people that he kind of looked up to. Like, I mean, let's name off a few, right? Let's just name off a few. Total Recall, L.A. Confidential, Mulan, The Mummy, right? Jurassic Park, the second one. Planet of the Apes, the second one. Alien, though. Alien.
God damn.
Right? Yeah. Logan's Run, Chinatown. The Omen, fuck man, Air Force One. Like the guy, the guy, he's not as, I guess, prolific as John Williams, but whenever he pops up and whenever he's got a film score, dude, like you know that it's probably Jerry Goldsmith, you know, or like, you know, he's kind of like James Horner in that way. Like he's kind of like got his own little style, but he'll add so much to it. Like, you know, he's just he's awesome, dude. Like I love it.
Well, and there's like the fact that he takes the same theme and does like 3 different variants on it. Like at the beginning, you have like the horn and the acoustic guitar when he's walking into town, and we can just kind of jump right into the beginning here.
Yeah,
we have this theme playing, but then when the action drops, that ba da ba 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 da ba ba ba, and you're like, dude, this is great. Yeah, it's fine. I got fucking goosebumps, man. And we'll get into Brian Dennehy, and you know, when everybody pops up, we'll get into it. So let's just jump right into this because we got a lot of ground to cover. Well, you know, actually, one more thing. Fuck it. I'll get to it when I get to it. I do want to talk about the decline in action movies. And is there actually a decline? And I'm just putting that out there now for just to chew on that. Like, do you think there is a decline in action movies since this, or do you think it comes in waves or what? But let's jump into it for now. Just munch on that for a second. So as we're starting with this, we see, you know, we see John Rambo. He's, you know, the quiet loner, the kind of, I don't know. Have you ever seen the old Bill Bixby Incredible Hulk TV show from the 70s when he was?
I've seen bits and pieces.
It's very similar, like just this guy kind of walking, you know, walking the American, you know, back roads and stuff. But just this drifter kind of thing. I love this imagery right off the bat. And he's just the first shot you see of him, he stops and he smiles. And he's like, wow, that looks, you know, he gives such a great, warm kind of positive feeling of like, and knowing his story now, looking at him, he's probably like, I've been through so much shit and I've seen so many people die and I've traveled so far just to be able to talk to somebody and share that experience with him. It's like the only time he smiles in this entire movie. Right. And you're like, holy shit.
He does it by looking out, like when he looks out at the landscape, he's like, this is quiet, this is calm, this is serene. Like, you know, it's like it having seen the fourth, I think it's the fourth one, the 2008 one where he kind of like retires on that ranch.
Yeah.
It kind of like goes hand in hand with that, right? Like it's just somewhere. This feels like a place where John Rambo would settle down and live, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And right here, I love this. You know, can you tell me where Delmar Berry lives? He ain't here, and it's like, you know, now that on a second watch, you're like, man, just the body language between the family there, and you're like, holy shit, like these people have little next to nothing, and now their patriarch is dead, which at that time was just, you know, a single mom with multiple kids. Like, holy shit. But God, this whole scene just destroys me because you can see he's so excited and he's like, yeah, you know, he's so big. We had to put him in the back of the picture. And then she follows that up with, you know, Agent Orange got him. Yeah. Right. Well, Agent Orange got him. He got cancer and died. And by the end, I could lift him off the sheets. And you're like, oh, God damn. Like that. And I don't even know how big he is, but you built that up so well. The legend of how big this guy is, who's just a minor character. But now, like, I feel the gravity of that so well, and it's their performances. This woman is fantastic. She has to cut him down to nothing. I'm like, God damn, she's fucking good, she's man.
This script is also super tight as well, dude. Like Michael Kozol, William Sackheim, and of course Sly all did the script, and it's just again an hour and a half, but it doesn't waste any time at all.
No, absolutely. And the whole the heartbreaking part of this scene is him giving her the picture because what the fuck, what point? I don't want to have that, you know, the only person I could share this with is gone. You might as well enjoy it. And he just throws everything else in the fire as he walks off, just like, fuck it. And it's like, damn. So we're immediately setting the scene. And, you know, before we see him do anything, as far as we know, he's just, you know, looking like Bruce Springsteen with those blue jeans and that jacket on, like, and we're building up this likability, like right off the bat. And we're caring about people that have only been on the screen for 4 minutes. You're like, Jesus, how is this so effective, man? But what I like is the juxtaposition to, and now you know, just kind of skipping ahead, we're getting to Teasel, fucking Brian Dennehy. The interesting thing is when we see Stallone, he's walking, he's gruff, he's got the backpack and the sleeping bag. He looks like this, just a drifter, lean, kind of lanky. And then when we see Teasel, he's this kind of large gut and he's kind of burping and he's fat and happy and comfortable versus the juxtaposition of Rambo, who's wandering and dirty and cold and constantly like blowing, warming up his hands and popping his collar. I think there's a huge juxtaposition between the comfort we see of what Teasel has versus the wandering loner of Rambo. And I fucking love that. I love how quickly they establish that. And Teasel's like, oh, hey, you going to take a bath this week? Like he's kind of, he's cutting up with people and saying, hey, and good morning. But this is all supposed to be set in Washington. They actually filmed this in British Columbia, but it's supposed to be Hope, Washington, but it was actually a town called Hope in British Columbia. And I was like, oh, that's cool. Or Vancouver or wherever they filmed it. But what do you think of Brian Dennehy right here? Was this your first experience with Brian Dennehy? Have you seen a lot of his stuff?
No, I mean, this is the first time I've heard of his name.
Holy shit. Tommy Boy? You never saw Tommy Boy?
No.
My God.
What the fuck? What is this language he's speaking? I don't understand.
Chris Farley, Tommy Boy? Oh my God.
Actually, I had seen something from him. He was in Romeo and Juliet, the Baz Luhrmann one.
Yeah. Oh, and he's in fucking Cocoon. Man, I love Cocoon. That's a really great old movie. But no, yeah, and honestly, when I was, I was like 12, 11, when I first saw this, same age as you are now. And I, no, I'm just kidding. And this was the first thing I had ever really seen Brian Dennehy in. And looking at him, I'm like, how is this guy not ever just like spray painted green and turned into the Hulk? I don't understand this. He's like, he looks like the Kool-Aid man, but if they turned him into a real person. He's this juggernaut, the size of his head. He's huge. And it got me thinking, oh my God, Brian Dennehy would have been an amazing beast for X-Men. That would be so good, man, because he's smart and he's funny and he's charming, but he's huge. He's a gigantic guy.
He's a big guy. Yeah.
Right. Well, and it just goes to show, like, with size and shit, like, he and I are actually somewhat the same size. Like, he's about 6'2" to 6'4", 250 to 300 pounds. And that's exactly the same size I am. But his shoulders and chest, he's barrel chested, huge fucking dude. Like, I don't really ever feel dwarfed by a lot of people. I don't really feel small, but Brian Dennehy just looks like a barrel with legs. He's just this huge fucking guy. And there's a funny story. Patton Oswalt, the comedian, one of my favorite comics. I love him. I got to see him summer before last in Nashville. A really fucking funny guy, but Patton Oswalt's like, so I go to the Batman Begins premiere. I bullshitted my way into it. It's an old album. He's like, I go to the premiere. I'm not eating any of the food because there's like Christian Bale and, there's Katie Holmes and everybody's ripped and gorgeous. And he goes, you know what? I could be in movies. I could be gorgeous. I'm not going to eat any of this food. He's like, so I'm staying away from all the food and I'm not eating anything, being miserable. And I bump into Brian Dennehy. For whatever reason, Brian Dennehy was there. He's like, so I started talking to Brian Dennehy and he's like, it talks to me for like 15 minutes. He's a really nice guy. He has no idea who I am. This is when Patton Oswalt's like really first getting big. And he said that fucking Brian Dennehy was like, well, hey, good luck with the career and stuff. And he's like, okay, thanks, Brian Dennehy. And he's like, dude, that shattered any kind of like self-will I had. I just ran to the buffet table and started eating burgers and shit. He goes, and all of a sudden I feel this huge hand on my back. I turn around. It's Brian Dennehy. And he goes, haha, character actors, who gives a fuck if we're fat, and starts cramming food in his mouth.
Nice.
Next to Patton Oswalt.
Nice.
I was like, dude, that's fucking hilarious, man. But
I just love like fucking like 5 meters away, Christian Bale standing there with his like American Psycho body.
yeah, exactly. And the funny part is I'm looking at Brian Dennehy. I'm like, I want to see him fight John Goodman. I was like, I want to see a bare knuckle brawl between these two. Like,
dude, I think John Goodman can beat him, dude. I mean, like,
you think so?
Yeah.
Oh. I was wondering, I was like, I wonder who would win. They're both roughly similar sizes, but Goodman's just something. I think he's got some size on him, though. He's just such
Goodman's
a big dude.
Voice too, dude. Like, he'd scream him to death.
Am I the only one around here who gives a shit about the rules?
I told you you can have what's left.
So we're introduced, to again Teasel right here, and
just quickly, Colin. You mentioned the juxtaposition between the two characters here, and it's really, really well done. And I'm like, it's fucking great. I don't want to get too preachy, but I love how kind of relevant this movie is today. Like, you know what I mean? Like in terms of like how we treat the homeless and how we treat.
Oh yeah.
I guess for lack of a better term, vagrants. Basically. Okay, so when I went to the States last a couple of years ago, not my last trip, my first trip, it was basically the West Coast, so it was LA and San Francisco, and there is a massive homeless population there in those two cities. Like it was actually kind of like shocking to me. Like I was just like, whoa, like Sydney's got its fair share of like homeless people, but this was insane, especially San Francisco. Like, I mean, like literally I stepped out of the hotel and there's just people on the streets and I'm like, what happened here? Like something must have happened, or I don't know, or like the unemployment rate must be just insane. I have no idea. And like, apparently, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know how much you know about this, but apparently sometime during the Reagan or Nixon era, like they closed down a bunch of like mental institutions and stuff. And they just kind of put everyone on the streets. Is that kind of correct? I don't know.
I mean, it wouldn't surprise me, but I don't want to say either way because I'm not 100%. But you're probably right. I know of a lot of like, and I've read stuff before of homeless people going to California because of the weather all year long, that they don't have to worry about. Like our winters here can be fucking brutal,
Right. Yeah, exactly. But I mean, like it kind of like, especially the treatment of like. We'll get into it right here. I guess we're basically here when Teasel picks up Rambo and is like kind of like he's drives him to the other side of town, basically to the entrance of it or to the exit, whatever. And he although he doesn't realize he's a vet, and Rambo is not obviously going to bring that up that he's a vet, but you just don't really realize the importance of someone or what they've been through. You just kind of like take it on surface level, and you're just like, oh, okay, so you're obviously a vagrant. You're a homeless person because you're carrying your bed around with you, right? Like you're not someone who's defended our country, who actually has a Medal of Honor. Like, you know what I mean? So it's kind of like amazing how relevant it is to today, because that's what happens today. Like, I mean, like, I'm not a terrible person, but I mean, I've looked at a homeless person and be like, God, like I don't know how you can do this, like, just very, very selfishly. Like, I mean, like I've been there. I'm sure we've all been there. Like, like all of us have kind of like at some point disregarded a homeless person as just a homeless person because that's what they are. But technically, I mean, think about the life that they've led, or how they got to this situation.
Actually, it's funny you say that. Yesterday, I was coming home from work, and there's always like, here we have a program where it's people who are homeless or they've had drug problems and stuff, and they put them on a corner and they sell these dollar papers. And, the papers aren't really anything, super relevant like sports and news and weather and stuff, but they're kind of like churchy kind of bulletin stuff. It's nice. I don't even believe in that shit, but I always get one, if I see somebody and I got a buck on me or something. So the other day, there was a guy who was just standing there with a sign who was like, anything else. I was like, I don't have any cash, I was like, you smoke cigarettes? And he was like, nope. I was like, I can't help you out. Sorry. And I realized I had not eaten all my lunch. And I was like, I got half a bag full of kettle chips and an apple. He's like, fuck yeah, dude. Thanks. And ate it. I was like, and I told him, I said, hey, all this shit that's going on right now, you need to be fucking careful, man. I was like, get you some hand sanitizer somewhere, like get something. I was like, and he was a young guy. He's like 40 something. And I was like, man, be careful. Like, and exactly what you're talking about, the stigma of just like, in any given day, I'd be like, yeah, it's a homeless guy. And then to think about this guy's in the middle of Nashville asking for stuff. It's like, dude, you got to be careful, man. And it kind of opened up. I know exactly what you mean of like, in the context of things, it's incredibly different, especially when you're not used to seeing that many homeless people. It's really kind of an eye opener, and you're like, oh, fuck. But really, I mean, just get a goddamn job. I know, you probably have alcoholism or mental health or something, but, just fucking quit being a pussy. Get a job. No, I'm just kidding.
That's your policy on the homeless problem.
Yeah, exactly. And exactly what you said. He's driving him across town. Is there anything for me or anything? Is there some kind of law against me eating here? Yeah, me. I'm like, damn, that's a good line.
Dude,
but,
if this guy, if Rambo, all you needed to avoid this movie was just give John Rambo, a fries and burger and a burger, and this movie would have been like resolved.
Right? Yeah. If Teagle had just like taken his early morning coffee and steak Texas size shit 15 minutes earlier, then this movie never happens. Teasel may live through this, but he has like cardiac arrest 6 months later, taking a shit. He has like an aneurysm or something. He dies like that guy in Big Fish on the toilet. But yeah, so he drops him off, and he thinks, he's like, hey, you want advice? Take a shower, and, take a hot bath and shave, take that jacket off, you wouldn't get messed with so much. He's like, so much? He's like, you're the one fucking with me here, dude. Like, I'm sure you're not the first and you won't be the last, but like, you're the first person I've talked to in town, and you're being a fucking dick. He's like, yeah, it's like you creating the problem and then acting like the problem is, you know what I mean? It's like so silly. Like, it's like everybody's picking on Rambo. No, it's you, motherfucker. Like, don't act like everybody else is doing this shit.
Right. I love how quickly Rambo brings it up. Like he's just like, why are you pushing me, dude? Like, you know what I mean? Kind of like on the third moment where it's just where Teasel's kind of like, I guess backhanded him, I guess, like in terms of like their conversation. But like he's just like, why are you pushing me, dude? And he's like, what do you mean? Like, what the fuck do you mean? What do you mean? Like, you know exactly what you're doing.
Right, absolutely. And it's just one of those things where, leave the guy alone. He's not doing anything. In fact, he was here visiting somebody, but that guy is now dead. So yes, he is here visiting somebody, but no, not anymore. But of course, he takes him out to the edge of town and drops him off, and just the look of defiance, the look towards the road that somebody wants you to go down versus, and he looks right back. I'm like, oh, dude. And
Goldsmith's score just comes in.
Yes. Yeah, it's so fucking good. Yeah, and the whole way this fucking shot is framed with the car backing up and then him, putting his hand on the gun. But the fucking one of my favorite lines from this whole thing is he's searching. He's like, "What do we have here?" He goes, "What's this for?" He's like, "Hunting." And he's like, "Well, don't be a smart ass. What do you hunt with a knife?" Name it. I'm like, good God, dude. Like, that's fucking, and that knife, I mean, that whole thing is, without that knife, he's dead. Yeah, I mean, it's stitches, it's a compass, it has matches in it, it's like his weapon, it's his tool, and it's like, holy shit, that knife, the sales of that knife when this movie came out, come on, dude. Like, that must have exploded, I got the Rambo knife, I got the
knife. The knife is the size of a fucking baby's arm. Like, it is a gigantic knife.
It's like half the size of Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's dick. No, but
it's the current size of fucking. Actually, no, I'm not gonna go there. I was about to say Kobe's, but oh, shit.
Well, there is almost a helicopter crash in this, so no, but no, there was.
We are on fire, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, right. Fuck it, the world's ending. I'm gonna let everybody know how big of an awful piece of shit I am. Like, you ever see those memes where it's like when your real humor gets out and somebody sees the dark side of your humor? Oh, yeah. I'm like, I'm not censoring it anymore. I don't care.
We're just that like little flash of like Bilbo Baggins as he makes the move for the ring, the one ring.
But so yeah, he drops him off. We have this whole return, and he he arrests him, books him for vagrancy, resisting arrest, and possessing a hidden weapon, whatever the fuck.
And here's the thing, though, right? Like he says, book him for vagrancy. As a lawyer, like, how do you prove vagrancy in this situation? Like, I mean,
I think, and they talk about that in Cape Fear because they're trying to bust De Niro, and they're like, if he has no job,
that's the first thing that went through my head every time someone mentions Cape Fear.
Oh, dude, and all I can think of is the Simpsons, Kelsey Grammer, nice. Sideshow Bob, like parody. Yeah. But no, and they say that in Cape Fear, they're like, if he has no job and no money, and he's just hanging out here, you have no business here. You're not spending money. You're not making money. You're just standing around here. And I think that's the only way you could bust. And he knows, that this guy can't hire a lawyer, some overpriced fucking brown dude from Australia to help him out. So he's like, fuck it. No, I'm just kidding. He's like, fuck it. We're just gonna stick him with this. And that's the only thing I thought, which is, it's crazy is like, why don't you just arrest him, say, hey, we're not going to book you. We're going to drive you back out there and get the fuck out of here for real. Like, why waste the taxpayers' money and your time? And it just shows you the kind of the necessities are not in order at this place, and the ego is too big. I like what Troutman says later. He's like, yeah, it doesn't sit well with that badge. It's like, no, you need to just let this is not the hill you want to die on. But I mean, and then this whole scene's just absolutely great. Them booking him in and just him surveying everything, looking where they keep the guns, like watching him cut through the fucking paper with a knife. This whole scene, and we're introduced to, they keep calling him Art Galt. I think it's Arthur Galt.
Yeah, Art Galt is what I have. But just quickly, like, we get that quick shot of him like cutting through that paper with a knife, because when we see like Rambo go up to Teasel with the knife later, like, and he's holding it against his throat, I'm just like, oh man, that shit just like tore through that paper earlier. So imagine how fucking sharp that shit is. Like, it's just needed, Well, and when you see it on his jugular, when he pulls it away, there's actually a tiny cut from where it's like, dude, just barely placing this against you. Yeah. But yeah, dude. Hey, by the way, is Galt a cunt?
Well, it's certainly GALTCUNT. I mean, it works, but no. And actually, what's really interesting about Galt, and I'm glad you brought this up. And yeah, I mean, he is. There's Mitch, who is like on the side of Rambo. There's I love how these characters, like these guys, actually have depth to them. Like, they have like we get a sense as to where they fall in this situation. Like, obviously Teasel, I'm assuming Teasel goes after John Rambo so hard because he doesn't want to be shamed by, quote, a vagrant, unquote. And then, Art Galt is kind of like even further on that. Like, he's kind of like a sociopath. Whereas, like, Mitch is kind of like, well, because he's young, I'm assuming, right? Like, so he understands that, holy shit, this guy's not, there's more to this guy than meets the eye. Like, so he doesn't really have that level of, I just got shamed by a homeless person situation. Right. Well, you're exactly right. That there's different shades of what's going on. You have the rookie, you have the guy who's kind of in between obviously Will is like the sheriff and he's the head honcho, but you can see Art Galt being the guy who probably started off like Mitch and was like real, like, yeah, I'm a cop. And then he's like, no, this is not what you think. We don't can't do everything by the book, like wink, wink, nudge, nudge, like type shit.
Right. Galt reminds me of someone who, if you give them even just a little bit of authority, they're just someone who's going to, parade that around and act like they're king shit. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like he doesn't get any at home. So he just comes to work and he's just like, I'm just going to book everyone, It's funny. It actually reminds me of like me back when I was like working in the cinemas. As a 16-year-old, I get to fucking kick people out. So it was like my little power trip of the day kind of thing.
Oh, what do you got? You got a Three Musketeers in that purse? Get the fuck out of here!
Get the fuck out of here!
You just start macing the whole row of people, just like really far away.
Oh, you want to go into the R-rated Saw film? Show me your motherfucking ID, bitch.
Yeah. Just like pull out a nightstick and break somebody's wrist on the spot.
Just 0 to 100 real quick.
Yeah, right. And this is, exactly. We see him getting booked. Rambo, named after an apple, by the way.
What?
There's Rambo. They're called Rambo apples. And David Morrell was trying to think of the character's name, and his wife came home, and they're Rambo apples. I was like, oh. Okay, I guess that's good.
He just names it. Can you imagine if he just named it Apple? He's just like, I'm going to name my character Apple.
Yeah, right. And
Paltrow type shit.
Oh God, yeah, Jesus Christ, fucking. I'm sorry. That woman is like white privilege incarnate. I can't stand it. Like, Jesus Christ.
We touched on it in the Iron Man podcast.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, and this is where we see where all this shit is just, it's escalating and it's escalating. They're trying to fingerprint him. They're threatening him. You're looking at the acid of a 90-day incarceration. They get the hose out. They see all the scars on him. Like, it's getting worse and worse and and worse. And you're like, okay, dude, something's really fucked up with this guy.
As this is happening, though, we get the quick little glimpses of like his time over in Vietnam.
Right, absolutely. Like where we break down into this infamous like shaving scene, and man, the scream when they cut across his chest with that knife, and you're like, oh my god, that's hard to watch, man. Like, ooh, like I've never been slashed across the chest by a foot, but I've gotten a paper cut, and it was awful. No, I'm just kidding. I can imagine like what the fuck that, like, dude. Let me tell you, I had a teacher in high school. I might have told you about him before. His name was Mr. Hosier. He was a U.S. Navy SEAL, and he told us a bunch of shit you should never tell a bunch of teenagers, dude. It's fucking crazy. Talking about blowing people's heads off with double barrel shotguns and having to shoot kids in Vietnam. Like, he was a history teacher, and when it came to Vietnam, he didn't hold shit back. And people asked him like, "Why are you so open?" He goes, "Well, I was so not open about it for years, and I had to, I had to open up about it at some point." He's like, "I couldn't just sit there and be quiet about this and bottle all of this in." He got like 3 Purple Hearts, like he was shot multiple times and shit. And like, he's an unbelievably nice guy. He always had this little twitch in the side of his face from where they couldn't get all the shrapnel out. But unbelievably, one of the best teachers I've ever had. Unbelievably nice person, very well adjusted dude. I love, man. I'd see him at the store every once in a while, a year or two go by, and I'd see him, and I'd always stop what I was doing to talk to him because he's such a fucking cool dude. But I mean, he would tell us stories like, like at the end when Rambo's talking about the shoe shine thing, he's like, there was a kid who was selling ice water, and you were not supposed to take anything from, any of the locals at all. And one of the guys in his platoon was just like, fuck it, and drank this ice water, and it was glass, and it slit his throat from the inside out.
Fuck.
And and the kid didn't know. The Viet Cong had given the kid, like ice in the thing, and they had to shoot the fucking kid. And you're like, holy fuck. And that's just the shit that the U.S. are having to do. And I don't think he was ever a prisoner of war. I don't know if he knew anybody. I wasn't going to ask him that shit, but I can't imagine the other shit that he saw and did. And one of the craziest stories he told was going through a field with a guy in front of him, and he was looking at a tree, like, I don't know, 100 yards away or something. And he saw one of the branches move farther down, and one of the brushy parts of the tree move farther down on a limb, and he's like, that's a sniper. And he pushed the guy in front of him, and 2 shots went off. It was 2 guys. They shot the guy in front of him in the throat, and killed him like instantly. But they shot Hosier in the collarbone, and he was laying on the ground, and they were in high grass, so it gave him time. He's like, I got a double barrel shotgun, and I cocked both. It's back in Vietnam when you had those, like a sawed-off double barrel shotgun. He's like, so I cocked back both the hammers and just laid my hand on it and laid there like I was dead. And they came and just stuck their heads out like right over me. And he's like, I just shot both of them. And he's like, it's like watching somebody's head get erased with a pencil. And I was like, holy shit, that is fucking. And I'm 15. I'm like, holy shit, man. Like, and my dad would get pissed and be like, I don't think you should be telling all that, blah, blah, blah. I was like, I mean, that's it's shit.
Yeah.
Right. In 3 years, I could sign up for the military. I think I should know some shit like this, but not
only that, like, I mean, like, it's what, like, and I don't want to move it over to another movie, but like, I mean, Watchmen, right? Like, Watchmen tells us or teaches us about how, and I say we, but I mean, I'm talking about America, how losing the Vietnam War taught America humility, right? Like, I mean, like, this is a country that won World War II by dropping two nuclear bombs. So it was just like, America, fuck yeah, like, we're kind of like on top of the world. And then it's like, oh, actually, we're not.
Right. Well, and I think that's a perfect segue into something where they talk, and it's expanded upon more in the book, but Teasel is a Korean War vet. And with Korea, that was not considered a failure like Vietnam, as far as I know. I mean, I could just be totally talking out of turn, but yeah, I know it's been called like a forgotten war, but it wasn't nearly on the scale of like what Vietnam was. So there was kind of a resentment of like, you were the first people to lose, like World War I, World War II, Korea, like like there was not Vietnam was just a shit show, and it was the first time you had public outcry against a war. Not everybody was pro-war anymore. Nazis, fuck yeah, you give me a gun, I'll shoot a fucking Nazi. But these people are just like, we're just going over there and blowing up these brown people for why? Yeah, exactly. And like raping women and fucking killing kids and shit, and like unbelievable, awful shit. But it was just so unbelievably unnecessary. And I think when you see somebody like Teasel, who's like, I did my thing, I came home, and I wasn't walking around wearing a flag on my jacket, drifting around being a fucking asshole. But the big reason is because between Korea and Vietnam, you also have the 60s, and that's a huge part of this movie is the changing of the old guard to the new guard, which is like these Vietnam vets and stuff, and the change in you were the ones who you guys lost, even though and it was the draft. That's another crazy part of it, is like that was not that was just a huge problem. And I swear to God, if they ever did the draft again, I'd fucking just go to Canada. I'm not doing that shit.
Well, there were like fears of that back in January.
Right. And I mean, I'm so fucking obese and I have terrible knees. They'd never take me anyways. But that's what's so interesting, is seeing this kind of juxtaposition between, Will and the Korean War and Rambo and Vietnam. And there's something, it's the death of the old American patriotism, I think, is what Teasel kind of represents. And now we're left with someone like Rambo, even down to like the way that they kind of their military styles. But we'll get into that, when we get into that infamous scene in the jungle or the forest. But
I got a quick question for you before we do move on. And I know we've spent so much time on this. Do you consider this movie First Blood like to be a Vietnam War movie, like how we consider, I guess, Schindler's List or Saving Private Ryan to be a World War II film?
I do, in the sense of that it's not about the war, it's about the aftermath.
Right,
it's not about, exactly. It's not like We Were Soldiers or something, Yeah. I think that it has a lot more to say about the aftermath and the treatment of the people coming home, these people in this awful war being drafted for something they didn't even want to do.
Right.
And then, they're spat on and called baby killers and shit when they get home. Like, that's fucking terrible, man.
And that to me makes the more, I mean, like, I do love like my Vietnam War movies, like, Full Metal Jacket, Platoon, and Apocalypse Now, some of the greatest movies of all time. But like, I think this aftermath stuff makes for a better, I guess better is a poor word, maybe just a bit more of an interesting sort of idea to flesh out in a film.
Well, yeah, because I think this is also, the book's written in 72. The movie's not made till 82 or released till 82. So you've got a 10-year gap where people really started to change their minds about the Vietnam War, and they were hearing these horror stories of how bad it was. And then, it's kind of like, at the time, this was necessary. A World War II movie, the battles and stuff are interesting. Nobody wants to watch a movie when the people come home and they're just celebrated for 90 minutes, Right. Like, our whole source of conflict is the aftermath of this war. And that's exactly like what you said. It's not, it's not, better is a poor word. I know what you mean. I know in the context that you meant it. It's just more interesting to watch. Obviously, it makes for a better story.
Right. I think a similar film to this, actually, to Rambo, might be, have you seen American Sniper?
I was just about to fucking say American Sniper. Holy shit.
I mean, like, obviously you move everything up like 20, 30 years to Afghanistan. And it's just this kind of like disenfranchised guy who kind of like gets obsessed with the war, right? Like, and just ends up just going off the deep end. Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it also just dawned on me that we've never covered a war film. So like all this is kind of like unexplored territory for us.
Yeah, well, and I grew up on a steady diet of war and westerns, and I just eventually got sick of them, because it was what my dad was watching all the time. But occasionally he'd bring home some cool shit like Enemy Mine with Dennis Quaid and Louis Gossett Jr., and I'm like, dude, this is badass. But I just got so sick of, Eastwood and John Wayne and shit. I just was so tired of it. But oh God, where the fuck are we? No, I'm just kidding.
We're at the escape. I mean, like we're definitely here.
Right. Yeah. Now, yeah. So obviously, yes, it's a horrible flashback. You know, he beats the fuck out of all these guys. The dude, he gives the elbow right in the nose. Dude, that's the guy. I feel like Lester, I think's his name. That's the one I feel the worst for. But again, he fucking gets his knife, gets the fuck out of Dodge, and I'm like, oh.
This is one of my least favorite parts of the movie. Like just this kind of like hand-to-hand stuff. I don't know. I feel like
some of it's pretty bad. I'm not going to lie.
I feel like it hasn't aged very well. And you know what? It actually reminded me of The Warriors. And then like I looked it up. The cinematographer for this, Andrew Laszlo, also did Warriors.
Holy shit.
Yeah. So like it kind of feels like a little bit of like a brawling kind of situation. Like, you know, in Commando when he's like in the shopping center and he's like using the fucking booth, like the telephone booth and shit. I don't know, man. Like it's obviously a little bit better than that, but it's still like the hand stuff. I mean, you can obviously tell it's a product of its time,
right? Well, when he's like knocking the guy out the window, the guy's just like, oh, yeah. And like it's really, really goofy.
Dude, they literally say, "Hey, stop!" Like what? This guy's not stopping.
If
like,
I
they
had
ask him politely.
If I had to rip one thing from this movie, and I just got to say it's the worst thing about it, is the ADR. The ADR is the worst part.
When he's riding really down the path with the bike, dude. Well, get out of the way.
And it doesn't even matter. Yeah, it's you know, and that's the thing is, you know, 82. No one's, you know, they're like, they won't be able to get high definition and look at their mouth.
Well, actually, I you know, like I've watched this with my dad and my brother, and like, you know, my brother doesn't really get into old movies as well, but he's just like, you know, like the sound is like so off, like, you know, like when they're firing guns and stuff, it's so bad. And I like turned to my brother and I'm just like, dude, like, can you imagine being a producer or like a studio head in 1982, and like we're streaming this. So, you know, we've passed VHS, we've passed DVD, we've passed Blu-ray. We are streaming this as we're watching it. Like they have no idea of like, they couldn't even like come up with that kind of concept in their minds, like, you know.
Right. Well, it would seem like something out of a Philip K. Dick, you know, like watching anything you want on your phone, you know.
By the way,
I mean,
sorry, just quickly.
Wait. Man in the High Castle.
No. Oh, yeah. I was just fucking. I love that, by the way. Like
that's Philip K. Dick.
yeah. No, it is. I actually didn't figure that out till much later, but yeah, no, actually, you know what? I go to my dad. I'm like, hey, so this is 2 weeks ago. I'm like, hey, so you mind if we watch First Blood? Because I'd never seen it before, and I don't think you have either. And my dad's like, hold on, you don't think I've seen First Blood? And I'm just like, he's like, when I grew up in Fiji, I grew up on a steady diet of old James Bond movies and Rambo, and I'm just like, he's like, I've seen this shit like 70 times, and I'm just like, what?
Well,
excuse me?
I'm actually really happy that you said James Bond, because what's interesting is you see James Bond, who's a spy. It's just another mission. It's another girl. It's another villain. But with Rambo, any of these movies, he does not get involved in a mission to assault. And, you know, he's not like Captain America, you know, like he goes in and he's like, first one, he's being, you know, we know the events of the first movie. The second one is he's, you know, prisoners of war. He's going to help out prisoners of war. Third one, they kidnap Troutman, you know, the Russians. The fourth one, it's these people in Burma, like missionaries. It's you know, the fifth one I think is more about like local shit, but it's like
Last Blood is not about, like, doesn't have any of that. Yeah,
right. But it's always a group of people who need him to help them achieve something. He's never doing this for like, you know, oh yeah, I'm getting paid, or like, yeah, I'm just, you know, I need a war to fight. It's like, no, like the war always finds him.
It's kind of like a Western concept, right? Like, I mean, like, like if you take the good, the bad, and the ugly, you know, like just like the man with no name kind of situation.
Right, exactly. Hang 'em high. So I mean, we can break this down if we want, but basically he escapes. It's a pretty cool, you know, he like clotheslines the guy on the dirt bike. God damn. One of my favorite parts is when Art is going to shoot the rifle and Teasel smacks it up and you can see the burst of it right at the top of the screen before it goes out of frame. I was like, oh, that's good. I fucking love that. So yeah, you know, he takes chase on him again. This feels like the T800 versus the T1000. You know, the bulky slickness of, and even, I mean, you see Teasel, this big dude in this big bulky 80s cop car, versus Stallone, the ripped, you know, little kind of fast dude on a dirt bike. It's like, that fucking totally makes sense.
But I
this whole
love as Teasel's like bombing this fucking car around, dude. It's awesome. Like it's just like, you know, it goes through all these fences, and it's just it seems so like old school filmmaking. Like, you know, there's no like special effects or anything like that. It's just all completely practical. We're just gonna take this car and just throw it around.
Well, and the funny part is there's shit where Stallone was like, dude, Stallone broke his ribs during this movie. He broke fingers. Like, he really got fucked up. Like, Richard Crenna in the making of this was like, Stallone was doing like 75% of that shit. And he's like, I don't know if he did the actual jump. Like, and the jump was just into like a big mat on the bottom. But at some point he had to fall into that tree. And that first hit, he broke all the ribs on that side that he hit. And that's the shot that they use. And you can hear him like, Jesus Christ. And he fucking falls out of the tree. But
there's one situation where the car just like jumps over like the hill, and it looks like some Dukes of Hazzard shit.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and the funny, you know, so this whole thing ends with him flipping the car over and he's getting out and running. But what's so funny is that the car was not meant to flip over, and they were just like, all right, fuck it. This is how we're setting it up. Brian, get in there, you know, and that was it. It's like, holy shit. So, you know, he takes off, and we see, you know, he's got no jacket, you know, he's lost a sleeping bag. You know, this is really a guy with nothing, you know, except for a tarp and a knife. And yeah, it's holy shit. The stakes could not be higher for him. And the funny part is, like, you know, he escapes and he gets the tarp, and they're kind of regrouping. They get the chopper, they get the dogs, you know, they're going out to find him. And the whole time they're just like, oh yeah, we got some bucks up here last year. Oh yeah, why don't you let my dogs hunt? And they're all just kind of laughing it off, thinking, oh yeah, we'll get this guy and bring him into town and blah, blah, blah. But it's like their naivety and their eagerness and their underestimation, whatever, they're underestimating him is what is their downfall in this, because they just think that these are our woods and this is a drifter in our town. And it's like, no, like you have walked into his backyard now. Like Mitch even says it. He's like, we're not hunting him. He's hunting us. And it's like, yes, like you don't realize how bad you fucked up until he starts like, dude, this guy. And that's what sucks about later iterations of Rambo. He's not a guy to just start shoot. You know, he takes on hundreds of people by himself with hip firing machine guns and sawed off shotguns. But in this, he is strategically, he's like, you know, what are it's like he's Metal Gear Solid.
He's the Predator.
Yeah.
Like this is like literally the Predator situation. 2 years later, we would get the Predator with literally these Delta Force guys being hunted by an alien. And like this is, this section of the film kind of feels like that, right?
Right. Well, and the whole thing of, you know, the being so out of the element, but it's interesting seeing, and this is what I wanted to talk about here when they get up here, with Teasel, you can kind of start feeling that military training where he's like, get a skirmish line 150 feet apart or whatever. You know, you can see him in that, you know, role of being in charge and telling people what to do. But this is not, you are outdated. You are the T-800 to the T-1000, because the T-1000 is more advanced. It knows how to hide. It's an infiltration. Like, you are this big bulky box, and this is like liquid running around you. You know, it's like this thing can run circles. And that's what's so interesting is they get up there, and that's when the guerrilla warfare happens. That's when the hide and seek, you know, kind of part of it falls into place. And these guys are out of their element. They don't know what to do. You know, it's so funny because, and this is what I think is interesting about Dennehy versus Stallone is like, I'm right at home in this, and these guys don't know what to do. They're fucking overweight and dicking around and like these redneck kind of guys. But the fact of the matter is that their war, the Korean War, most of these guys were probably in Korea. Their war was a functional, you know, this was not guerrilla tactics and, you know, forcing POWs to play Russian roulette and, you know, keeping them in a pit and pouring piss and shit on them, you know.
Well, doesn't that remind you of something though? Like, doesn't that remind you of like the United States troops going over to like a foreign land like Vietnam and getting absolutely destroyed in enemy territory? Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's
right,
not,
exactly.
It's unfamiliar land. Yeah.
Right. Well, and the big difference between the two of them here is the fact that Teasel doesn't know what it means to lose. He's never felt the loss that Rambo has. And Rambo's like, the shame. I lost this war and people died. And I didn't come home with a pat on the back and saying, hey, we lost some numbers, but we won. They're like, you don't understand, the pride cometh before the fall. You don't have the humbleness of losing something and realizing that, I think they still look at war as like part of, hey, we fought in the war. It's what every guy does. He signs up when he's 18. And it's like, I didn't sign up. I was forced to go. And it's like, it's so wildly different. But I mean, this whole scene is just incredible. They kill the dogs. They Orville, the fucking dog man. They drop his ass and put a tourniquet, and they just leave him. They're like, hey, you got to release that tourniquet every 15 minutes. And he's like, I fucking don't know where I am. But what's, it's and this whole, and I also don't want to wait. Did we skip?
Yeah, we skipped the helicopter.
Oh, yeah. What am I talking about? Yeah. So this is where fucking Art gets killed. Only death in the whole movie because he's not wearing his fucking safety belt. And again, that's what we were talking about, the juxtaposition of Art versus Will, where you can hear Will on the radio like, hey, stop shooting. I want him alive. Like, do you hear me? Stop. Like, stop. And he says it so many times. It's like, okay, we kind of have to absolve some of this off of Will and put this onto Art, like our negative feelings of how he's being treated. Yeah. We need an ultimate evil kind of, like you said, a sociopath.
Right, exactly. We need to like show that Art is kind of like going off by himself for sure. There's some shots in here, by the way, with this helicopter that I absolutely have no idea how they pulled it off. Like, there's this amazing shot where like Rambo's hiding behind that tree, and like, he looks left, helicopter goes left, like, right, and then like, he turns the other way, helicopter goes the other way. Like, the framing of some of these shots is just absolutely stunning, dude. It's fantastic.
It's like the most deadly game of peekaboo ever. Like, peekaboo.
Right.
But no, I know exactly what you mean. Even when they finally stabilize the helicopter and you can see Art like pushing his hand forward a little bit, he's like, I got him. And you're like, dude, that is amazing. There's especially when Rambo first comes over to the edge and he's like, fuck, and he looks down, but you can see everything like that. They really, really do well with capturing as much of the landscape with that aspect ratio as they can. So yeah, he fucking dies. And the crazy part is when he grabs Art's body, you hear that music. They don't show you a flashback again of him being a POW, but that music was the music that played when they showed him being cut across the chest. Right. So now we just link that with him. He's looking at that body like having flashbacks. But I mean, of course, he takes the gun, he takes the coat, and he's kind of stitching himself up from the fall. And that's where they kind of come. And he's like, hey, I don't want any more bloodshed. This shit's getting out of control. I didn't do anything, blah, blah, blah. And I mean, you can tell this is well, yeah, and that's what's crazy. You can tell this is a movie from the 80s. Like, you fired on somebody surrendering who was unarmed. Like,
unarmed, no shirt. Like, just like, what the fuck?
Right. Yeah, exactly. And it's like, dude, this, I wouldn't hate it if they remade something like this, but it would have to be, the context of it would have to be, I don't know. We don't really have a recent kind of like Vietnam, we don't treat people like this, veterans, anymore when they come home. Like, oh my God, like where I live. Oh my God, dude. It's like troops are just like fucking kings, man. Like, especially here in the South, if you even mention, I can't tell you how many times someone was like, yeah, I was in the military for 4 years, blah, blah. And people will just stop and shake your hand and be like, hey man, thanks a lot for your service and blah, blah. Like the whole psyche,
the paradigm of it's changed.
Yes. Yeah. Oh my God. It's so powerful. It's crazy. But so yeah, and he gets. I
do think like the spiritual successor to this is American Sniper. Like, I mean, like obviously, in that movie he's not running around in a fucking forest like being chased by police, but like I love how that movie like tackles like the modern way that this would be like this would play out.
Sure, absolutely. That opening scene is, what a way to start a fucking movie. And I guess they graze Rambo in the head. I never really, I guess they shoot him in the fucking, like, But either way, this is where he takes off and they kind of get on the ground. They get, they get his body and they're like, hey, yeah, you might have picked the wrong guy to mess around with. John J. Rambo. He's a Green Beret, Special Forces. He won the Congressional Medal of Honor. I love Mitch. He's like, I knew there was something about that guy. I'm like, dude, all right, calm down a little bit, Mitch, because you're about to sound like bitch here in a second. I just, do you have a crush on him now? Like, what the fuck is going on? Mitch is like a little bit too into it,
I love it, but there's this childlike appreciation for this guy.
Right. Well, and dude, why don't you just let the state police handle this? You're like, it's ever since I was a kid, I'm like, that line, the way he delivers, it's such a little smart ass, like, you're out of your element, sit down, old man, and fucking Will Teasel going off on him. Oh, that's so good.
Yeah.
The editing in this as well. I'm not sure exactly who the editor is. I guess I could fucking stop being a lazy ass and look it up. Joan Chapman. She do anything refuge?
She doesn't have a clickable Wikipedia link, so I don't think so.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, there always has been a kind of running joke in cinema, though, is like great films are, if you look at a lot of great films, yes, they're directed by a man, edited by a woman. Tarantino, Scorsese, all of them.
Schoonmaker. Yeah.
Right. But yeah, I love the editing in this. He's like, I'm going to pin the Congressional Medal of Honor to his liver. And it hard cuts to him just out there doing shit. And you're like, dude, the editing in this is great. So yeah, and this is, this whole thing is where I jumped ahead with this whole hunt where they start hunting him down. They bring in the dogs and the chopper. I'm glad you said something though. By the way, I would have fucking just went right past Arkalt getting killed because I was just my dick was so hard to talk about this scene where I was just like, you ever get a boner so hard it like itches and you're like, oh God. Right, yeah. My eyes just fill up with.
Yeah.
I'm just crying calm. I'm like, The worst part is when you start crying cum, it's just like regular. You've got to, when after you come, you got to pee so you don't get a UTI. So I have to cry every time, regular tears after I cry cum so I don't get a UTI in my eyes.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like, haven't you ever heard of a child being born through the eyes? Like, I mean, come
on. So yeah, and this. I mean, God, it's infamous now, man. This whole scene.
It's all like non-lethal, like kind of like situation. He uses the booby traps and even his bare hands, dude. Like, it's just, it feels so primal. It feels so like I've got nothing. I've got no weapons, no technology, nothing out here, and I'm gonna do what I learnt over there. Did what I was told to do, and I haven't switched it off yet because I can't because I'm so lost. And I'm pushed into this corner, and I have no other choice but to do this to you. I love it.
Right. Well, and you can see that, like, exactly what you said, the non-lethal takedowns. I thought it was so interesting when he takes down Mitch, he could just easily put that whole knife in his thigh, but he slices instead of stabs. And it's like, damn, because you could hit an artery and kill somebody right there in that part of the leg. I'm like, holy shit, that's fucking so smart. He snaps the dude's arm. The other dude, I love the scarecrow he sets up just to get them, and he's terrifying them. They don't know what the fuck is going on. This storm is starting to come in, and it's like, oh, dude, this is fucking awful. I hate that he kills the dogs, but I'm like, I guess a fucking necessary evil.
Yeah, and it's kind of like an 80s kind of like way of thinking, right? I mean, like now, these days we care more about animals than we used to. It's just the fact of life.
Right, yeah, exactly. So yeah, and he just the scariest one to me, or I guess the two of them, is the fucking bar of sharp sticks that, dude, not only, I mean, yeah, it got him in the legs. No, that shit got him in the groin. Yeah, that shit got him in the baby maker, dude. Yeah. Like, oof. That one was always the worst
for me. It's the wire for me. Like the he's up on the post and he's got the wire around his neck. Yes.
Dude, that guy, like, Will. I'm like, oh, that's
shit.
Because it's so far up on his jawline, it's probably just barely enough for him to talk and breathe. And you're like, oh my God. But this is just, it's so fucking insane when Will is just like, oh, hey, yeah, let me just come over here and check this out. And it actually becomes kind of a jump scare when he jumps on Mitch and he's laying on the ground and has been in frame the entire time. You're like, what the fuck? And then when he turns on Will and he's right there again, you're like, holy shit. And he was standing there the whole time. You're like, this is this is crazy. Like, and when you think about it, you're like, wait, and this guy was such a badass and they lost the war. What must have they been up against to lose if they were this good? And that kind of blew my mind. Is like, wow, like even though you are this highly trained and skilled, like it was still an unwinnable war. Like, God damn, that's crazy.
By the way, after listening to your podcast with Matt Anderson on The Lost Drive-In, guys, by the way, go check it out, The Lost Drive-In, where you guys actually covered the void. Every time you say holy shit,
I
want to do like a supercut one day. Like I want to go back through our episodes and just like put it all together because I love it. I'm hearing it every time now.
Well, it's if we cut together my holy shit, we have to cut together your keen and 100%. Like, 100%. And I do. That's just my go-to. Like, holy shit. But
fucking
yeah, holy
blasphemous
shit.
bastard, dude. You know it's a Sunday here today.
Sunday, bloody Sunday. So yeah, this whole exchange with Will, it's just, I could have killed you. I could have killed them all. Oh my God. Like in your town, you're the law. Out here, it's me. Don't push it. Don't push it or I'll give you a war you won't believe. Let it go. And it's like, God damn, that's fucking like the whole looking at Teasel, this guy in his uniform and his gun and all of his equipment and shit and all of the stuff he came out here with. And this is what he's reduced to, alone and crying at the bottom of a tree. And you're like, God damn, like, Force holy shit.
Force of nature. But this is literally like what, I mean, to use the metaphor that we used earlier, I mean, this is literally the American soldier in Vietnam, right? Look at all the technology and everything we went in with, and then we were beaten by farmers with, shitty technology or basically zero technology at all, and we were reduced to this. Like, it's a fantastic analogy.
Well, and the whole thing of like, people acting like there are dignified times of war. And this was like out the window by this point. It was like, no, like I will hide in a pile of dead bodies and pop up and stab you. It's like that's unheard of to people who are World War II and Korean vets. That's fighting dirty. But it's like, no, this is how we had to fight in Vietnam to win this shit. That's what's so interesting about it. But I say we're pretty much at the half point now. He's let them all live and everything. We're pretty much, this is a good spot because we're kind of cooling off right before we pick back up again. So what do you say we take a break right here?
Absolutely, dude.
All right, guys, we'll be right back with the second part of First Blood. Don't go anywhere.
Good morning, afternoon, and evening, wherever the hell you are. Thanks so much for listening to this episode, guys. Just while we're taking a quick break here, I am going to plug some shit. No, it's not advertising. It's nothing paid. It's basically just kind of self-masturbatory stuff. Basically, follow us. Follow us on our socials. We have 2 pages on Facebook called Midnight Double Feature, obviously, and then we have our main group, which is called The After Party, which is fantastic. Our community loves to engage there, and that's our main way to communicate with our audience. Please follow The After Party. That's a fantastic page. And please follow us on Instagram, which is at Midnight Double Feature, and Twitter, which is at MDF Pod. You can listen to us anywhere on iTunes, anywhere on Spotify, on YouTube, wherever. And if there's no way that you can listen to us on your device, please let us know by getting in touch with us. You can do that by sending us an email, which is midnightdoublefeature@gmail.com. Now, last but certainly not least, please remember to rate and review us on iTunes. We would love to get your guys' feedback, whether it's positive or negative. Just please remember to, put a star and let us know in your little speech bubble thingy what you think of us and where we can improve. That would be fantastic. Guys, thank you so much for listening to my little rant here, and back to the show, I guess. See you later.
What's going on, guys? Welcome back. Coming at you with the second half of our coverage of First Blood. We are freshly squeezed, as we like to say. Our dicks are hard, our bladders are empty, and we are cocked, locked, and ready to rock back into this movie. So let me see. Yeah, so I think where we left off is where kind of everything, the big action has happened. The big action part of this movie has happened. And now it's kind of like, you suck the dick in. Well, guess what? You got to pull it out for a minute. It's like, yes, it was just the tip, just enough to tease. But now we're kind of going to get a little bit of normalcy. Everybody's going to regroup.
Sometimes you just get tired from breathing through the nose. You just got to breathe through the mouth a little.
Right. You got to generate some friction with that dick. You know what I mean? But yeah, this is where, we have this state. I don't even know if they ever say his name, the fucking state cop. But he shows up, and then we've got the National Guard coming in now, and we're introduced to Troutman as Richard Crenna. So what did you think of Richard Crenna in this?
He's got a presence, right? As soon as he shows up, it's like, whoa, who's this mysterious guy? He's kind of, he kind of reminds me of like the Men in Black. When the Men in Black show up to a situation and there's just this air of mysteriousness about him, you kind of get the sense that he is special forces, kind of like Black Ops, we're not, if I tell you this, I'm going to have to kill you kind of thing. Dude, this guy is awesome. His line delivery, the way he kind of through his line delivery, makes it seem like that Rambo is just a one-man killing machine, which he is, but just even the script as well kind of adds to that so much, adds to how much Teasel should be scared of this guy. Crenna does a fantastic job of hyping him up. He's a hype man, essentially. If Rambo was to walk on stage and sing fucking, I don't know, Purple Rain or some shit, Crenna will be up there before and be like, and introducing John Rambo.
Right. Well, it's letting, the people who become legendary aren't the ones building the legend. It's, the guy on the radio, this guy's a war hero. He's a badass. And the other cops like, hey, those Green Berets are real badasses. And then you've got Crenna showing up. And Crenna saying, this guy is highly skilled and he's unbelievably, dangerous. And, I think he gets a little over the top when he's like, I'm surprised you let all your people live, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, that's a little bit much. But, they are the Greek chorus. They're the ones who are building the myth, not Rambo. Rambo's just doing what Rambo does. But the fucking reporter gets me. He's like, somewhere in this mountainside, possibly above the snow line, shrouded in mist, the fugitive John Rambo is hiding. Units of the state police, along with local members of the National Guard, are now being mobilized. What still remains unexplained by local authorities is just how and where the former Green Beret came into possession of the weapons of which he allegedly killed one deputy sheriff and tried to kill 6 others. Only their skilled training and police enforcement techniques can save their lives.
I was like, oh, I love it.
And they say he'll be apprehended in a matter of hours. Like, oh my God, that line is so fucking funny,
it's
dude.
Funny. It's good stuff.
saving face, just in deny.
Totally.
But I mean, yeah. And the part that cracks me up is Lester. He's like, hey, I got something to talk to you about. Well, I'll catch you later. And he's like, spit it the fuck out. That part always cracked me up. He obviously doesn't want to talk about it in front of the state cop. And it's like, well, don't be fucking mysterious like this. But this whole introduction of Crenna is just really great. Like you said, you're lucky to be breathing. He slipped up. Make sure you bring a good supply of body bags.
I don't want to go past the line. God didn't create Rambo. I did.
Yes, that's
fucking awesome.
Well, right there, and that's such a, especially for the time, 1982. Not saying that's a sacrilegious line, but it is kind of like, whoa, that's kind of, especially where America was at the time, to have this character walk on stage and be like, God didn't make this, I did. It's like it's you know what it is?
Yeah, it's like holy shit.
Right, shut up. It's the fucking.
I'm going to say we've already blasphemed already so much on this podcast. So.
The interesting thing about Troutman and Rambo is it's almost, you've got this Victor Frankenstein and the monster kind of
nice.
thing.
Good pull, dude. I like that. Good call.
Well, thank you. Even with the end of it actually becoming the two of them meeting up again, that's really interesting. This is also cut back with, and there's a really, really great screenwriting thing somebody talked about with, oh my God, Alfred Hitchcock. Sorry, I totally blanked on his name. He called it Meanwhile Back at the Ranch. And basically while you're writing, Zohab is doing a podcast over here. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, Colin is blah, blah, and it's just the basis of story, like cutting to something else. So it's interesting. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, we're seeing, he's still alive. He's prepping. He's kind of got almost like a base of operations. He's hunting, and he's got this abandoned mine shaft. And they're just kind of regrouping here, and basically Troutman's like, hey, they think I can be of some help. I might be able to lure him out. And so he says just to let him go. We can pick him up later, diffuse the situation. And that's really the best thing you can do at this point. It sounds the most logical. Like, hey, he's not actively killing anybody. He's not coming down here, trying to kill us. If you go to him, this will continue to happen. So why don't you just let it go? And, but at the same time, it's like, there's no way that would ever really happen in real life. There's no way this guy, they're going to, whether or not he, was intentionally trying to kill Galt, he's dead now as a result of a, altercation between them. They're going to pin that murder on him. And everything else, I mean, going crazy on the dudes and stuff, like there's no way they're going to stick him with all this shit. But there's an absolutely beautiful shot when Troutman starts walking away, and Brian Dennehy's like, I think you're just out here to save your own ass. And you see the mountain behind them and all the people. Oh my God, yeah. It looks good. It's awesome. So fucking good. But yeah, we kind of see, at home with John Rambo cooking in the kitchen, killing that wild boar, and they're trying to get a hold of him on the radio, and they're trying to get a fix on his position, and this is where we finally see Troutman getting through to him with this. What did you think of this kind of play that he does with using the old military kind of, Commodore to Raven, blah, blah, blah. Like, what do you think about him actually using this to kind of, I don't know, it's like to bait him?
Yeah. I mean, like, I think he kind of knows, like I feel like he's got some kind of like pre-existing knowledge that maybe John Rambo will respond to, I guess, a call sign like this, because he's probably, I guess, having memories as we've already seen him, right? Like he's probably expecting him to, he probably knows that John Rambo is somewhat of a heightened and emotional individual. So I do like that he kind of like baits him with the troop leader to Raven, come in, please. He's calling him Raven. And he's just like, and then like he breaks through that and he's like, talk to me, Johnny. And like, I love that. Like when he's just like, talk to me, Johnny. Like, it's just like, it's kind of like saying like, you're a soldier, and I'm gonna call you out as a soldier, but then I'm gonna also at the same time, I'm gonna recognize that you're also a human being, and I'm gonna recognize that I'm gonna show you that you are a human being, and it's a fantastic tactic, dude. I like it. I like that he's just, man, like when he starts calling out the Baker team, right? Rambo, Messner, Ortega, Coletta, Jorgensen, Danforth, Berry, Krakauer, and it's just like, oh shit. Like that's when you're in it, dude. That's when you're like, okay, I've got him now. Like, if he doesn't answer to this, then he's not going to answer to anything. And then he's right. Like, well, and
it's interesting seeing him, he's using the military lingo, but then he also kind of drops it, like you said, like, talk to me, Johnny. And it's like, we're not in the military right now. Like, I can talk to you like a civilian. I can be more than just your colonel right now. Like, I can be your friend and help you with this. But it's great, him coming back and they're all dead, sir. Oh, and, oh man, fucking, it's so good.
Holy shit.
Yeah. It's going to make me think of The Simpsons, where it's, when they do the Radioactive Man movie, and it's like Don Rickles at the end, it's Andy Rooney. He's like, Jiminy Chillikers, Jiminy Chillikers, Jiminy Chillikers. Yeah, and he goes through this whole thing, not Danforth, he made it out, got himself killed in Nam, didn't even know it. I like this because Troutman's not just like, well, let me just come and pick you up, and I'll pick, we can take you home, and you don't have to do this anymore. He's like, you did some pushing of your own. You could have just dropped this and let it go, but you're the one who kept pushing it. And he's like, they drew first blood. And it was like, yeah, and that's where it ends. And he's like, Johnny, are you there? He's like, they drew first blood, not me. And that's the whole point is, after all the shit that I've done, and I'm still treated like this. Like, these people started this shit with me. I didn't start anything, and they're still coming after me with this. It's like, you do kind of feel the sense of unjust right there for Rambo. You're like, yeah, just fucking leave him alone. But it's like, it's gone. Like, if Rambo were black, like, come on, dude, he'd been dead a long time ago. Like, there's no way. Like, but the fact that you even though they're taking into consideration his military time and stuff like that, his service, it's still not, like, this has gone too far just to let the guy go. Like, even I'll say that, and I agree, you should probably do this, but it's not going to happen. Just like jurisdictionally, like, there's no way. And just say, what if you don't ever find him again? You know, it's like, you can't just, that's a fucking liability to just let that guy go. But I mean, this is with the fucking National Guard, these goddamn weekend warriors that come in, these fucking guys.
Seriously,
morons.
They just fucking lay it on, dude. But like, again, you know, jumping forward a little bit, I couldn't help but laugh when they're just like standing there taking the photo.
I mean, we're right there. Fucking you know, morons. This is where the fact that they all walk right past him and he's just like in the river right there. It's like, holy shit, fucking oblivious. And, you know, he jumps on the kid, and the kid, you know, he almost, you know, and that's where you think, like, okay, this is going to be one of those points where it's like, this is almost like the save the cat. Like, you know, we have to show our hero doing something where he could have just, it's a kid, and it's kind of a test of innocence. Like, do you do this to keep your, you know, to keep the buzz down? And it's like, no, there are some lanes that even he won't cross. It's like, cool, this is a nice test of his character to show our anti-hero right here. But, so yeah, and he ends up taking refuge in the cave. What's great is all of them are just the other guys are just terrible shots. These fucking guys are popping shots and they're not getting shit. And Rambo just pops out for like half a second, and he's just like, and you see the ground right in front of them just get ripped up.
Awesome,
you're like,
dude.
oh my god,
it's really like good, like, attention to detail. Like, just to see how close he got to these guys. But like, I mean, like, he's also doing it, I'm assuming, on purpose, right? I mean, he doesn't want to harm these guys. Right,
exactly. You know, if you start just, you know, popping people, you know, they're probably, well, I was going to say they might hit you with a rocket launcher, but I mean, fuck, that's what they, and these guys, dude, this just kills me. Like, appropriate response level is just not part of the National Guard training in 1982, I guess. I don't know. It's
they
like,
just blow this fucking abandoned mine in half.
Right. Well, it's like somebody punching you in the face, so you put a grenade in their pocket. It's like, what the fuck? Like, that's crazy. And this guy, this is Lieutenant Colonel Morgan, you know, leader of the National Guard, blah blah blah. And the other guys are just like, I'm not fucking getting anywhere near that goddamn that goddamn cave.
I'm just thinking about what you just said. Actually, like the disproportionate response, like that the National Guard, like, you know, throw back at him. But like that's a result of like the myth that's been conjured up by, I guess, the media at this point, and like by Teasel's guys, like, you know, like that this is a guy where basically if you make eye contact with him, you're dead. Like, you know, so I think them pulling out the rocket launcher and, like, you know, hitting the mine with it, like that might be a proportionate response in their eyes because of like what they're led to believe, right? Maybe.
Well, yeah. Well, these guys being, you know, these guys have about as much military skill and training as Green Army men that you play with. Like, there's just they're a joke. They're laughing and cutting up the whole time, and they just seem like a bunch of dudes who went to the same school together, and they're like, oh yeah, fucking hey, I'll see you at the paint store, blah blah blah. But you've got this guy who, like you said, this mythos has been built up around, and you know, nobody thinks just to sit there and, hey, let's hold the position. Why don't we get some people with some rifles in the back, draw them out with machine gun fire and shoot them from a ranged attack. You know, it's just like, no, just blow the shit out of it. That's just the simplest thing to do. God,
I mean, like, doesn't this guy, like, doesn't he say, I have to be back in the store tomorrow? Like, he's a fucking shop owner.
Right, yeah. Like, I mean, he's just a fucking weekend warrior. But they blow the whole goddamn thing, and this is where Troutman and Teasel show up, and I love that. He's like, well, you better get started right away. Like, that's a fucking great scene. But we see Rambo's not dead, like,
one
right
more
away.
For Soldier of Fortune.
Oh, dude. Well, and the guy, the comedy in this, there are little touches of like laughs like here and there. We're just looking from Rambo's point of view out the mine, and you just hear like, who's got the rocket launcher? Like off in the distance, like kind of like in the background, you can hear him like hollering for it.
Did you?
But I mean,
like slightly off tangent, Colin. Did you hear about the Soldier of Fortune, like the true crime thing? It's like a contract killing. I think it was, dude. It was crazy. Like they banned it for that or something. It was covered by a case file episode, but for the life of me, I just can't remember it. In 1989, 4 men were convicted of the conspiracy to commit murder in the 1985 contract killing of Richard Braun. The killers were hired through a classified services advertisement published in Soldier of Fortune magazine that read, "Gun for hire." Braun's sons filed a civil lawsuit against the magazine, and a jury found in their favor, awarding them $12.37 million in damages, which the judge later reduced to $4.3 million. The court said the publisher could recognize the offer of criminal activity as readily as its readers obviously did. But yeah, wild.
Well, and that, I don't know, that whole thing just reminds me of like Dale Gribble from King of the Hill, and you have like the Soldier of Fortune, like type shit. But the first line that fucking Teasel says, buried in a hole by a goddamn bunch of weekend warriors. It's like, that's great, man. Even his like frustration at it, of just this entire, how bad this has gone so tits up, like the PR nightmare of you like torturing and attacking this guy who has just been nothing but flee the whole time, and he ends up being a veteran who's like highly decorated. Yeah. That's a fucking PR nightmare, man. Like now, oh my God.
Fucking scandal, all over Twitter and shit. You're done. Your police department is finished. Like no one's visiting your town.
Right. Well, yeah, and you're out of a job so fucking fast it'd make your head spin. But I love the exchanges between them here. He's like, whatever Rambo ended up being, there was a time when he was exceptional, and he's like, yeah, right, nothing but a goddamn drifter. And it's like, oh Jesus, dude, I love Troutman. He's like, oh yeah, that's going to look real good on his headstone at Arlington. He's like, highly decorated. Yeah, it's like, dude, that's such a great line. Yeah. Killed for vagrancy in Jerkwater, USA. And this is again where we kind of, it's kind of like the false, I don't know, not a false climax, not a false resolution, because we know that Rambo's alive. But part of me would have loved to have seen where this movie went, where we don't see him, because the cave stuff is not really, it's not essential. I don't need to see him get out of the cave. It'd be kind of interesting just for, a little bit to show the impact of Rambo. I wouldn't mind a little bit more on, and we do get that a little bit here, where they meet in the bar and stuff later on, which is a great scene. But I wouldn't mind a little bit more at all, because there is a great chemistry between Dennehy and Crenna, where there's a mutual respect, but at the same time, Crenna just seems like he's like, yeah, I'm a military guy. This is your town. I got no problem with that. But you can tell Dennehy's just kind of have this whole fuck you, like, I respect the hell out of you. You're a colonel, but fuck you the whole time. Everything is just a giant pissing contest. The dicks are swinging, and there's so much testosterone going on.
I love when like Crenna like throws it back to him, right? He's like, you're a civilian. You're going to go back to your wife and your house. Like, you don't have to make sense out of all this. Like, it's good stuff because it puts it in perspective, for Teasel.
Well, and I love that. Literally, if you want to look at it from, again, like a screenwriting, kind of angle, literally, the whole hero's journey. Is it Joseph Smith or Joseph Campbell? I can't remember the guy's name who wrote, the monolith and the hero's journey and shit like that. But literally, this is like the part of that where you go into the cave of like transformation, and this is where Rambo goes from defensive to offensive. Now they think you're dead. This is where now, if you left, the audience is still on your side. But when he comes back and he starts shooting the place up, we're still on your side, but we're like, why? Like, this is badass just because revenge, fuck these people. But when you kind of when that filter is taken off and you look, say they think you're dead, leave, like, just go. Like there's no, now it could be ended here. And this is where you kind of, again, I'm with it because fuck these guys. And we've watched them for the last hour torture you and do this shit. But this is unnecessary. You could just leave now. But it's the switch from defensive to offensive that's really great, you know. And he loses the jacket, and he's just got the headband, and he's dirty. But
we've pushed this guy so far that, like, you know, he's gone the other way now. Like, he's cracked.
Right. Yeah, exactly. This is the point of no return. Again, you can almost look at, you know, society making him in this way, its own Frankenstein monster of, like, you push this person to do this, and now you have to deal with the repercussions of it. There's a lot of interesting meat on the bone right there. This whole cave thing's great. You know, it's a bit long.
It is long. We get so much of this. But I did like I like the attention to detail, dude. Like, at one point, you know, it's a rat's tail, but I thought it was a snake. I was like, whoa, that's some fucking good attention to detail. But yeah, this does go on for a little bit long though. But I mean, I don't mind it. It's okay. It is what it is.
That's a lot of fucking rats, dude.
Yeah,
that shit's terrifying. Yeah. That's a lot of rats.
It's scary stuff.
And like I was saying, we have this great scene between Krenna and Dennehy. I always said Krennahy or Dennehy. But Krennic. But again, this mutual admiration, between the two of them, and he's saying, he's like, what if he walked through the door right now? Would you welcome him with open arms, or would you blow his brains out? And he's just like, I wouldn't know that until I saw him. It's really great. And but it's a great kind of opening up of Teasel here, where he's like, if I was out of line before, I apologize. And he's like, you feel like you got cheated, didn't you? He's like, I wanted to kill that kid so bad I could taste it. Like, that doesn't sit well with that badge. Oh my God, that's some good fucking dialogue, man. It's like taking a sip of wine. I just want to take a sip of that and just like, oh, that's so good. Such good dialogue, man. I don't know. There's something about 70s kind of dialogue in movies. Sometimes it's so good, man. Like, I think you see Tarantino kind of heralding that back now.
I'd argue Quentin's like dialogue is nothing like we've seen in cinema before. Like, it's just, I couldn't even like place it to a decade, even though, he like 100% rips off movies. Like, like that's what he does. Like, his dialogue, dude, there's just, yeah, we'll get into that when we do when we do Pulp Fiction or something like that. But yeah, it's wild.
We're doing Reservoir Dogs, bitch. No, I'm just
fucking all right then.
but this is Rambo escapes through the cave. He jumps on the top. The fact that the guy doesn't slam on the brakes when a 160-pound man hits the roof of your car, it's like, what the fuck?
It's movie shit. I mean, whatever.
Right. So he fucking steals a truck with an M60 in it. And immediately on the radio, I love that. They're like, hey, somebody pulled the plug on that Rambo guy too soon. And just the shot of Dennehy just standing up in his chair like, fuck. Like, all the way on the other side of the room is so good.
Just quickly, the M60. Okay, so for the longest time, I thought that this movie was... I mean, like, it is the quieter one out of all the Rambo films. Like, I didn't think that we'd see the M60 in this movie. And then, like, I'm watching this movie and then, like, he picks up the M60. I was like, oh, that is in this movie. Cool. Because, like, I mean, I've seen the covers for, like, Rambo 2 and Rambo 3 where he's, like, shredded and shit and he's carrying around, like, the M60. And I'm like, oh, okay, so I guess we're not going to see the iconic M60 in this, but here it is.
Yeah, that's what I like. This one, it's an M60. The second one is the bow and arrow. That's the real, like, primary weapon. But then the third one it's a Russian-Afghanistan conflict. So, of course, it's just nothing but Kalashnikovs the whole time.
Of course. Fucking MiGs and shit.
So they, which reminds me, I downloaded that Modern Warfare Warzone,
nice.
The Battle Royale kind of thing.
I've been playing
I heard they have crossplay, so if they do, let's find some shit out.
Let's get on it.
Hell yeah. But anyways,
guys, we won't be podcasting for a while because we have things to do.
Just stops.
We have things.
Wow, their episodes like 8 hours long, and 7 of it's just dead air because they get up and leave the mics like 2 hours in.
Love it.
But this is where Rambo's headed back to town. We have that one lone police cruiser that tries to. It's like, are you lost? Are you a retard? Like that's so, what the fuck? That's such a bad idea. And not only is he in this huge fucking thing, but he could stop this bitch at any moment and jump in the back and turn you into Swiss cheese. Like get the fuck out of here, man. Like, well, and what blows my mind is they're going for kill shots, and I'm like, dude, just shoot his tires out. Like, do something. Like, shoot the engine. You've got revolvers. Like, fuck that engine up, man. But what the fuck? Like, trying to get a kill shot, like, I don't know, that's a 1 in a million shot.
Dude, one of my favorite moments is when he's in this truck and, like, he comes across that blockade, that roadblock, and he just like powers through it, man. Holy fuck, that looks awesome.
And again, the score. I mean, that triumphant horn. Ba-da-ba-ba. It's so fucking good.
Oh, wait, that's the wrong franchise.
Well, and I mean, it's movie bullshit, but it just cracks me up that he's not just so fucking dead when he gets to the thing it made me think of T2 when he jumps from the truck to the front of the brig and he just annihilates T1000 there. I was like, dude, yeah, there's like, but on this one, there's like 16 guys with guns waiting for him. It's like nobody, like, oh my God. Well, and the crazy part is somehow they lose him. This part always perplexed me, that like from the time he crosses the bridge that he gets into town, it's suddenly like 10 o'clock at night now. But the fact that there's not a single police officer like following behind him, like we just saw him blast through a barricade in a giant green truck going east this direction, and nobody has caught up with him by now. It's like, that's insane.
Dude, the sundown thing gets me. I was just like, wait, what?
Yeah, what? Wait, what time? It'd be different if it were like,
how
dusk
far are these places from each other? Like, what?
Right, yeah. That's the only thing I could think is, it's like maybe he's in a different county and he had a bunch of red lights.
That's not
I don't
true.
know.
Like, literally, we saw him run away from this town up into the mountains where he's coming from in the same fucking day. Like, what?
Well, and I kind of wish it had just been the thing of he gets the truck, he kicks the guy out, but he takes all of his clothes and leaves him tied up in the woods, and he infiltrates to get back in instead of just like, like manpowering his way in. It's like, I wouldn't mind actually seeing like a little bit. We've seen him be super sneaky and quiet, and he can be conservative or be explosive when the time needs. It's like, I kind of wish it'd been more of like an infiltration thing, but that's just my 2 cents. What do I know?
What do you know?
Right. So, but it's great. He crashes into the gas pumps and just blows that motherfucker up. Oh,
love it.
Damn.
It's like when he crashes into that shit, I immediately, my first thing that goes into my head is GTA. Like, because in GTA,
hell yeah.
If you crash into like, you're like trying to stay away from like convenience stores and like petrol pumps, because you're just like, immediately if you touch it, it's like an explosion. And like he just crashes into these pumps and you just see the fuel like flying everywhere. And it's just like, oh, fuck. And again, I thought that this was a smaller movie. When this movie was always like spoken about, I would always been told like that it was the quieter one. It was, it's very quiet. It's very, it's very psychological, blah, blah. So I was like, I just thought he was going to walk away and like he wasn't going to blow it up, even though those fuel pumps are like begging to be set alight, like begging to be. And he did it, and I was just like, "Whoa, that's fucking awesome, dude! I love it." And it's a beautiful fireball. Right.
Well, I think there's something interesting between I keep wanting to say Teasel and Rambo, is the fact that Teasel is relying on it makes me think of Aliens, which is just another analogy for the Vietnam War, where you have highly trained groups of people with technology and numbers, and they can't take on this one dude who just has the will to survive. Like, these people still get to go home at the end of the day and just go back to their hey, you're in no pressure to solve this, just go home. But Rambo just doesn't have that. This is all or nothing for him. But for these guys, most of them, it's like, this is just a job, except for Teasel. So I think there's something interesting just about the different kind of the structure of their wars of Teasel being like hey, start a skirmisher line, here's a tourniquet, blah, blah. Like, you can see him being proactive, but the type of wars that they fought were just so totally different. I mean, this is basically the assault on the town, this whole thing, blowing everything up. And the line when Troutman shows up to the police station. And this is after Teasel has told everybody to get off the streets and all this other stuff. As soon as Troutman shows up, he goes, "They found Rambo's body. It stole a truck and blew up a gas station on the other side of town." And I fucking laugh out loud every time, like I hear that line of just his dead body being the one to run out there and do it. If it were like a Weekend at Bernie's situation where it's just this dead body doing all this shit, I laughed out loud at that line. It's fucking good, man. But yeah, but this is brilliant. Blow up this shit. Get everybody's attention over here, so I can go on the other side of town and wreak havoc. Now, literally, you're trying to eat this fucking town alive. Really, the stuff that he does is brilliant. You know, he blows up that ammo shop. He starts shooting the transformers to knock the power out, so he can have even more like ground advantage. Like, dude, that's fucking crazy. And the interesting thing about Teasel's hiding is that he is hiding in his, like, this fortress of his, you know, that this is my fortress of solitude. This is my castle. Notice he's the only person in there. And it's like he is literally the last man standing in this shit. Like everybody else is out there putting out fires or trying to deal with the ramifications of his actions toward Rambo. And I think it's fantastic that we're literally having to see the town deal with this while he's still having it. It's not like some deputy corners Rambo in a store. It's Teasel versus Rambo, which is, I mean, that's just a, you know, good conflict. Who wants to watch a fucking deputy just walk up and catch him, you know, in a dumpster and put a bullet in his head, you know, but right. There's something interesting about the location of this is where it all started. This is where it all ended. But this thing, when Rambo's just annihilating it, it's the symbol of the authority of what started all of this. It's a symbol of everything that I've been wronged. And he just annihilates it. And I think that speaks volumes about that. And it's great seeing Teasel being up on the roof and just being almost like Teasel has been driven out of his home. And I like that he's being assaulted on his own front now, and they're not out in the woods, and they're not out on that old dirt road, or, you know, he's not dropping off on the edge of town. We're hitting you right in your fucking heart. It's like, that is awesome. I really, really love that. What do you think about this whole shootout, this whole ending thing where it's not some big epic battle? It's not some, you know, emptying their clips, Matrix type shit. What did you think about this?
Yeah, I dug this, man. Like I dug the sneaking around, like him kind of him taking out the Transformers and, like, you know, the gun store, like creating the diversion as he just like makes his way towards the police station there. It's good stuff, man. Like, I mean, like, this is, again, what he's trained for. I guess not really for the urban warfare, but it's kind of like interesting to see him in like an urban setting, taking on, not taking on the town, but just taking on Teasel, right? Like just trying to get close to him. And that's exactly what he does. And it's very clinical. Like, you know, it's very well thought out. It's very, it's very military-esque. It's fantastic.
Well, and this, I mean, because we're pretty much right here at the end with the final confrontation between them, and I don't know. There's something funny about Teasel going up there on the roof, and he literally gets off like plop, plop, like 2 shots, and he's just ripped up straight from the floor up, like just ripped up in his legs and shit. Like for some odd reason, he just thought that because he was underneath him now, he shouldn't shoot. Like, I don't know. I would have just, like what Rambo did, just blast through the fucking ceiling and kill this dude, but he stopped shooting for some reason. I'm like, keep shooting. Like your bullets will go through the roof. Like, keep shooting. You'll hit him. Like, but ultimately, of course, you know, he pops fucking Teasel and Teasel drops, and right before, you know, I'd love it. Kill me, you son of a bitch. And that's when Troutman shows up. Dude, again, like, you're dead at this point. Like, somebody is waiting out there with a rifle and they just pop shot him. It's like, you blown up a gas station. You're about to kill our town sheriff. Like, there's no way he's not fucking dead at this point.
Yeah,
like,
you're being nuked from orbit, dude. Like, yeah.
Right. Yeah. Like, you're getting a special treatment is one thing. This is like special consideration. I don't know. This is kind of nuts, but
I mean, like at this point, the state troopers are calling in state troopers from other states for help. Like, you know what I mean? Like, this is a federal investigation now.
Right. Like, they have the guy from Mindhunter out there right now. So, like,
creating like a fucking profile on you.
Right. Yeah. But I mean, this whole thing, this is huge. This whole monologue, and this is the most we ever hear him really speak, except for the radio chatter earlier.
This is incredible.
Yes. Talk to me. What did you think of it?
Man, this I knew. So I can't fully remember which episode it was, but I remember, back in the day listening to LSG Media quite a bit. Dean talked about this moment, in particular. I think it was like they were covering a Stallone movie, and they were talking about Stallone's acting, and they talked about, like, they contrasted what movie they were talking about to this, and like his acting to this particular moment, and just how kind of like watching this scene and how scary it is. Like, it's actually horrifying. Like, him kind of like unraveled and just speaking like totally emotionally. He's sweating. He's got no shirt on. He's angry at everybody. He's just angry at the world. He's angry at the situation. Like, he feels lost. Like, he literally says civilian life means nothing to me. Like, there we had a code of honor. Over there, things meant stuff. Like, things meant something. There, like, we had an actual kind of like track to follow on. Like here, it's just, we have no track. We have no way. It's just totally aimless. It reminds me a lot of, in Shawshank, when we get, what's the old guy's name who gets let out?
Brooks.
Yeah. You remember when Brooks gets institutionalized and he goes out into the world and he's just lost? Like, it kind of reminds me of that.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I mean, like, that's this situation. Like, he feels like he doesn't know this world anymore. And like, that to me, that's a horror movie. Like, you're living a horror movie in your mind every day. Like, and he talks about, like, the way he talks about these guys is just like, I did everything to win, but someone didn't let us win. And at home at the airport, those maggots were protesting. Like, you can feel how angry he is. And you feel like that he's fighting back, at Teasel and things like that, but he's fighting back at the demons in his head. And it's just, it's beautiful, dude. It's fantastic. This is some of the best, I've ever seen out of Stallone, period.
Right. Yeah. Like, I think that, yeah, I when he first starts talking, I mean, I like that. When he starts crying and stuff, it's a little bit like, not that bothered me at all, but it was kind of like, it kind of doesn't work for me a little bit just because it's Stallone, and it sounds like he's like laughing almost. I don't know. I'm just being kind of nitpicky, but the whole beginning of that is, I here I am. I was in charge of $1 million equipment. I flew, machine gun helicopters, and I can't even hold a job fucking washing cars. But when he gets on the ground, it kind of pauses. Like, his monologue is, he kind of calms down for a second, and then he's, talking about the guy with the shoe shine kit, and he's like, this guy always talking about this car. He said, Johnny, I want to go home. I said, I can't find your fucking legs. Oh. And it's like, God damn it. That is fucking brutal, man. Holy shit. No. And this whole thing with Krina, with Troutman, is he comes in and he just grabs him and he's like, come here. He grabs Troutman. It's like, I need you. Fuck this whole military shit. Like, you're now probably the only person that really understands what I went through and is alive from that point in time in my life. Like, I need you more that as a, more than a mentor right now. I need a friend. I need anybody. This is just, it's insane. This whole monologue is just so fantastic. And apparently a lot of this has Stallone's fingerprints on it, that he was like, at first Stallone admits that, like, I was for the war at first, and then as time went on, I was like, this is awful. Like, what's going on here needs to stop, and it was just getting really, really out of hand. So he kind of pump some of that into this, but I mean, we're pretty much there at the end. He's saved.
Yeah, I mean, like, I just want to say, I love the way this movie ends, dude. Like, I mean, like, the last lines. Sometimes I wake up and don't know where I am. I don't talk to anyone. Sometimes all day long. Sometimes a week. And the last line of the movie is, I can't get out of my head. And that's basically, we just watched a horror movie, right? Literally, like, this is like Full Metal Jacket horror movie. Right,
absolutely. And but it's now, and what might come as a big shock is, like, do you know how this originally ended?
No.
Well, and the novel, when he kind of embraces with Troutman, they kind of lock lips and they go at it on the floor. No, I'm just kidding.
I was like, what?
Teasel just sitting there like bleeding out of his legs, like no, no. At the end of the novel, and I'm not sure if this is exact. I get a spoiler alert, obviously, for the book.
No one reads
I know
books
the way.
anymore.
I know. Right, yeah. I know the way that they filmed it. I'm not sure if this is exactly what happened to the book, but he dies. But Troutman like pulls out a gun and he's like, you created me. You have to be the one to kill me. And Troutman can't do it. And Rambo reaches forward and he pulls the trigger and it shoots him in the stomach and he lays back and dies. Huh. And they said the test audiences just hated it, but also that means the whole point of the story is, well, you Vietnam vet, you'll never get over it. Kill yourself, and they're like, no, we don't really want that kind of message. We want to show that people can bounce back from this.
Yeah, I mean, like that's what I was about to say. I kind of like the ending where. Well, I want Rambo to eventually get better, right? I mean, like, I want him to. I mean, like, let's take the sequels out of it, of course, right? Like, just going from this movie alone at the end of this movie, I kind of want to believe that Rambo eventually gets better, Like, I mean, sure, that's not what history has taught us. Like, sometimes, sometimes Vietnam vets and people who have suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder don't end up getting better. They just get worse and worse and worse. But I want to believe that he gets better,
Right, absolutely, and it just that would be such a downer to end on. Hey, that's pretty much First Blood. We're at the end here. They take him out. He's got the handcuffs on him, the code. It's a long road, and that's the end of it. But the oh fuck! God damn it! There's something I was about to say, and I just totally lost my train of thought. Oh yeah, the second one. Do you know who wrote a lot of the script on the second one?
No.
Is James Cameron.
What? Really? Holy shit.
Yeah. A lot of his stuff, I think, got changed around, but he definitely had a hand in writing that. And the second one's okay. This is the best one.
That's cool.
But I think, there is one tiny little thing, though. I've got an IMDb here.
I was about to read it, dude.
Are you talking about the one called It's a Long Road for Somebody?
You know what?
Dude, please be my guest. Okay. I'll read the second one.
All right. Because there's only 2 1-star reviews, which is very strange.
Yes, that's crazy, man.
I've never seen that before. All right, man. Colin, I'm sorry to steal.
And part of me wonders, is this guy has to be kind of trolling, because I looked this guy up and I started looking at his reviews. He's reviewed about 400 movies. He gave Clueless, the Alicia Silverstone movie, a 10 out of 10. And I was like, there's no way. This person cannot be real. There's no way.
Well, all right. Let me. You know what? Fuck you. I'm shaming him. His name on IMDb is Matthew_Capitano. This is titled "It's a Long Road ... for Somebody." Posted on 13th of August 2014. Here we go. And I'm going to read this exactly how it's written. There's no exaggeration at all. Lazy drifter stumbles into a small town and refuses to comply when a kind-hearted sheriff asks him to leave.
That dude, I scared the dog. I laughed so hard when I read that.
Haven't even started, dude. Ready? Despite the excellent skill and training of the police department, okay, Rambo, parentheses, Schmuck Stallone, soon goes on a rampage and destroys the city, including Transformers, so all the residents in the area have to live without heat or electricity in December. Rambo will surrender, but not before he gives a 5-minute rambling, incoherent dissertation about all the Flenglies, in brackets, friends, friends, he lost in the war and how he can't hold a job for 8 hours. Colonel Troutman delivers this maniac to the cops with Troutman's coat draped over Rambo's shoulders so he's nice and warm, and his hands cuffed in front of him so he's not too uncomfortable when Rambo really ought to be hogtied and have his shoes taken away from him.
Why the shoes? Why the shoes?
Why is that punishment?
I laughed so hard at that. It would be like
punishment.
He should be hogtied and they should draw Sharpie stuff all over him. It's like, wait, what? That's weird.
We got to give him the punishment in Die Hard where he walks over glass with barefoot.
Right.
It's a long road, but someday the nice citizens of this once quiet town will get their lives back on track now that Rambo has been put away. Until the sequel. Oh shit, dude! I bet he was trolling. He must be trolling.
Dude, I just, if not, that's the best genuine negative review we've ever read on the show.
100%.
That's amazing, dude. 100%. It's great. Now this one's pretty good. I think this one is legit, but this person knows about 10 words and 9 of them are all negative, and about 8 of them are also about 8 of those words are also boring or pathetic. Actually, is one of their favorite words. Personally, and this is this person. By the way, hater of crap is their name. So this person obviously walking on fucking sunshine. So here we go. Personally, I found all of those Rambo flicks to be pathetic, boring, and worthless.
So why are you here? Was the first. Why are you here?
This was the first installment of this pathetic franchise, and it is also one of the worst movies ever made, being overrated, boring, and cliched, even for the first time where this was made. And it is also a very ugly film. Awful, awful movie. This movie is awful beyond belief, and it is one of the worst overrated movies ever made. There isn't anything good about this movie. It was terrible, tedious, and irritating from beginning to end. I hate this movie. I think that it is the biggest disgrace for the action genre, having a very negative influence on it. And personally, I think it is the worst war movie ever made. All right, let me tell you something. This is not a war movie.
Let me pull you in real close. Real close.
Right, yeah. I feel like it's kind of at the party where everything's getting awkward and you're like, can I talk to you in the other room? This is not a war movie. I want to know how this is an awful, awful movie. How is it overrated and boring and cliche?
Right? Like, I mean, like,
give me your points.
Don't just say something is bad just for the sake of it. Give me your argument. Like, I need to see evidence. You need to point out specific things that are bad so you can put forward your argument. Like, I'm sorry, you just can't say that something is bad just for the sake of it. You just can't.
Right. Like one of the things I don't like the ADR on this. You know why? Because it doesn't match the thing and it sounds off at some points and it's weird. Yeah, that's a point. Like, but just saying it, I just think it's bad. Well, how is it bad? I don't know how to tell you it's bad. It's just bad. And it's like, do you know how things work? Do you know how pros and cons and things go? But either way, I mean, that's kind of. Do you want to do final thoughts or listener comments?
Let's do some listener comments before we dive into final thoughts. We got a few, man. I mean, like, you know, these older ones get quite a few comments. So, you know, I guess people like old movies. I don't know.
Well, I tell you who definitely likes old movies. Jose Rivera.
Legend.
Fucking love Jose. Thank you so much, Jose, and everybody who comments, you know, consistently. It's great, and it really gives us some doing. It makes us look popular. It makes us look like people like us, and quite frankly, that's far from the truth. No, I'm just kidding. So Jose Rivera, the wonderful, the fabulous Jose Rivera said, I caught First Blood very late in life. I knew about Rambo from the cartoon and action figure I had along with the pop culture osmosis the character had, but I don't recall ever seeing the movies. I actually kind of agree with this. I didn't catch these movies until I was like 10, 12, 13, but everybody knew about Rambo, you know, is infamous. When Rambo came out on DVD in 2008, I picked up the box set because it was this awesome metal case, and I figured, why not? Seeing First Blood for the first time, wow, what a great movie and a great score by Jerry Goldsmith. I always joke with my friends that if Teasel had just told Rambo where to get something to eat, none of this would have happened.
Right,
of course.
For sure. I got one from Andrew Smith. Do you want to hear the craziest twist in the Rambo genre? In the first movie, Rambo only kills one person and completely in self-defense. In Rambo 2, 3, and 4, he kills entire armies. Everyone always says the same thing, that First Blood is more realistic and it's better, and because it's based on the book. Hey, fuckheads, in the book, he kills everyone.
Right. And I love Patrick Harrington jumping in. I just finished the book earlier this week. He almost kills an entire town. It's insane.
Yeah. Let's talk about this just quickly. What do you think about how the sequels kind of like ended up? Like, do you know what I mean? Like how it ended up being this kind of like, I know we touched on it very briefly, like how he just ends up killing entire armies and stuff like that. Do you like prefer that over this? Like, I can't imagine you do, right?
No, honestly, I think it's a terrible, if you ask me point blank, it's kind of like, let's take a movie that was not an action film and not a war film. It was kind of, I guess you can call this an action film. It is a little bit, but I also feel like it has drama. It has heart. An action film doesn't really, I'm not saying it can't have those things, that they're
Good
mutually
action
exclusive. Right. But good action films, when you watch Upgrade, you really want to see Logan Marshall Green kick those guys' asses. When we watch Inception, we're fighting for Cobb because he wants to get back to his family, but when we're watching Expendables, it's just stop some guy before he presses the big red button and blows everybody up. It sucks, and the second one.
I think there's a place in the world for those kinds of movies. You know what I mean? I don't always want to be mind blown by movies like Inception or The Matrix and things like that. Sure, I want to see the action pulled off in a good way, but sometimes I just want to sit down and watch a movie like The Expendables 2 or Transformers or some bullshit like that. I don't mind it as much as you think, like the Michael Bay movies and shit.
Well, right. Well, and my thing is, those are, if that's the type of movie that, and I'm not saying there's anything against those. There's plenty of movies like that I find enjoyable or tolerable to watch, but it's the fact that they spawn 6, 8 sequels, and it's like, dude, this is the same shit over and over and over again. And it's like, at least you get something every once in a while refreshing, like Bumblebee. I was like, oh, that's actually kind of the first few minutes of Bumblebee, the Transformers spinoff. Is awesome, dude. It's really good. I haven't even seen the rest of the movie because I watched the first 5 minutes of Bumblebee and I was like, all right, I need to finish this now.
I don't like the rest of the movie.
Okay, well, that's fair. But but no, there is kind of I feel like there's been decline with action. It's the same thing with horror. I mean, horror goes through the same thing. Great horror in the 70s and the 80s, and then going into the 90s, it gets a little bit weird. In the 2000s, it's really bad, and then you're back to really good horror movies. So I think it's kind of the same thing with action films. There goes through periods where you get the Commando movies and stuff, and you get
like the Nick Cage really shit, the Con Air, The Rock, and Face Off in the 90s.
Right, yeah, and ultimately, then you come back later on, like the first Taken movie. The first Taken movie is great. I really enjoy the first one.
Oh yeah,
I didn't need a television show and 2 fucking spinoffs. I don't need that. I just remember
there's a television show. Like, holy shit.
Right. Because it's so important that everybody remember. It's just like, dude, it's just people milking this shit for all its goddamn worth, and it's like, man, it
depends what you kind of classify as an action film now, right? I mean, like, if you want to go broadly, then technically you can bring in all the superhero stuff. You can bring in Marvel. You can bring in those are action movies, pretty much action movies as well. But they're very unique in their own way because they belong to a shared universe. Whereas the first thing that comes to my mind is John Wick, right? I mean, I think Chad Stahelski and David Leitch are doing fantastic things with the action genre. I think we are seeing better action movies here and there. They are popping up more and more. We're not getting the bullshit that we did in the late 90s and stuff like that. But yeah.
Well, yeah, totally. I agree with that with the MCU and stuff. But I'm going to read off Patrick Harrington's comment really quick. Oh, knick-knack, paddywhack, give a dog a bone from Married People Watch Movies, him and his wife Barb. Check out their podcast. Patrick says, I first watched this with my dad on VHS, of course. We'd already watched a bunch of over-the-top Stallone action movies, which has got to be a pun because Over the Top is a Stallone movie. So this was quite the departure for me. I enjoyed the action, but by the end, I was like, wait, why is Rambo crying? He's supposed to be a tough guy. While I enjoy Rambo 4, where he literally kills an army, this is still my personal favorite and the best of the series. Showing this to Barb as well, so we'll see what she thinks too. And Alan Michael Pools, I can't help but think of Frank from It's Always Sunny.
Nice.
They drew first blood.
Nice. I'll read the last one. Ashley Bedford. Thanks for commenting, Ashley. About the podcast, he says, can't wait for this. Love all the Rambo movies recently. Watched number 2. And whilst it's completely different from the original, it's still an enjoyable action movie and is definitely a product of its time. First Blood is more character driven. Nice. Good pull, dude. I like it.
Hell yeah, absolutely. Guys, thank you guys so much for commenting. That's, and really it helps so much tremendously with building a repertoire, with our listeners, and then promoting shit on our socials and stuff like that, and people have just been commenting more and more, and it's just been fantastic, and we really always appreciate you guys' input. Unless you just write some crazy stupid shit, if you comment, more than likely you're gonna get your shit read out on the air. So always, as as usual, we really appreciate that, guys. But why don't you hit me with your final thoughts there, Zoe?
Yeah, I'm so glad you made me watch this movie, dude. I mean, like, I think this is one of the ones.
Hell yeah.
I think this is one of the ones where it was like always on the back burner. It was like constantly on the back burner. You know, I'd heard so much about it, so I was like, why the fuck should I watch it? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I've just heard so much about it. I've basically heard everything. But you know what? Sitting down and watching for the first time, I was genuinely surprised by how great it is. Like, it's a fantastic film. Like, you know, through and through. Like, it's a great story. It's a great metaphorical kind of like metaphorical, I guess, experiment at how basically the Vietnam War affected us. I say us. I know I'm not American, but I'm just gonna say it. Like, I'm just gonna say us because, you know, I consume American media. I just do. I mean, like, you know, it's kind of like ingrained in my mind. Like basically, it's just a thing. So it's super interesting to see how they created this kind of like analogy, basically of a Vietnam veteran who's on the run, but technically, what ends up happening is the cops are the soldiers in this situation, and it's the Vietnam veteran who's kind of playing the Viet Cong in this kind of like flipped around situation. But not only that, man, just how disenfranchised someone can get post-traumatic stress disorder, and just how lost someone is. You know, like he's not a out and out killing machine. He's not out here killing in cold blood. He's just lost, and he's just trying to find a sense of direction. And like Brooks, he's just trying to find his place in the world again. And I found that deeply affecting and deeply moving. And I'm really dig this movie, dude. I can't. I'm probably just gonna, like, if I had to give it a score, I'd probably give it a 9. Like, it's not my favorite movie of all time, but I only think that because it's dated. Like, I think if I saw it when I was a bit younger, I would have thought this was amazing. So yeah.
Well, hell yeah, dude. Obviously I love this movie. I going back and watching it, I would definitely say it's probably in, if not cracking my top 25, then definitely my top 50.
Yes.
I think it's fantastic. I think it's probably one of the best Stallone movies, you know, besides the, you know, first couple of Rockies and maybe something like Copland. He's just Creed, fantastic, dude, here.
If you haven't seen Creed,
I saw the first one. I haven't seen you know, Creed 2, The Legend of Curly's Gold, or whatever the fuck.
It's not as good. It's okay. It's not as good. The first one's definitely fantastic, though.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. Yeah, it's been a while since I've seen it, but even Rocky Balboa is a really good movie. That's a good one. I always remember enjoying that. But you know, this is the heyday of Stallone, and I think it's kind of unfortunate the stuff later on, you know, kind of the movie Stop or My Mom Will Shoot, or, you know, like Oscar, or, you know, fucking you know, Over the Top is kind of cheesy, Cobra's really bad, and it's like, man, this is just, you know, he's really made some fucking stinkers. But I don't really, when you look at Schwarzenegger, I just don't see a lot of movies that Schwarzenegger made that were like really, you know, Jingle All the Way maybe, you know, and you do stuff like The Sixth Day and Eraser.
I'd argue that Sylvester's actually a better actor than Arnie. Like, I'm just saying, in terms of like range and in terms of like ability, I just think I've seen more from Sylvester Stallone in Rocky, in this first Rambo, in Creed, than I have from Arnold. Like, I mean, you know, Arnold definitely fits into some character stereotypes and some characters he was born to play, like the T-800, like Conan. But I just think that Stallone has a bit more range, you know?
Well, yeah, and I definitely, where you, you know, first and foremost, Schwarzenegger was a bodybuilder. He'd always been a bodybuilder. Not say he's not a good actor. He's actually better at the comedic stuff than Stallone, but Stallone's way better at the dramatic stuff. And it's just interesting seeing them, you know. Stallone really never did a lot of comedies, you know, because it just wasn't his forte. But
just quickly,
Schwarzenegger was known. Yo,
how did we not mention Demolition Man? I fucking love Demolition Man.
I mentioned it at the beginning, Judge Dredd and Demolition Man, and just briefly, you know, like that was kind of my repertoire. And Danny and I and all of our friends, you know, we would always watch that constantly.
Well, I mean, like,
we always reference it.
In a world like with zero toilet paper, we should now use the 3 seashells.
Dude, yeah. One of my favorite lines is when he's like, "Sir, what is your boggle?" My boggle?
Chumbawamba?
How much you... how much you weigh? And he picks his ass up and throws him into the thing. But anyways, that's a whole other movie to cover someday. We got to have Danny on for that. But yeah, I remember obviously watching this movie, getting it. It was one of the first DVDs I ever owned. And I remember it was one of the first times I remember watching it on a big television screen with surround sound and having speakers behind you. And, growing up, we really didn't have a lot of stuff like that. And then probably about 2003, 2002, 2004, I remember us getting that, and we had Rambo 1, 2, and 3, but we also watched like Matrix and stuff like that. So it was just cool watching it with with surround sound and stuff. But I have a lot of fond memories of this, and I think I didn't even take any notes for this because I already knew like all of the everything plot wise in my head because I could recite this movie front to back, and I know the scene so well.
Is that the same way you watch as well, front to back?
Yeah, front to back. So I don't get so I don't get any in my shit pussy. Cool. But no, I obviously I love this movie. It's a 10 out of 10 for me. Maybe the ADR is a little wonky, but who gives a fuck compared to everything else, You got anything else before we jump out of here? You got anything you want to say?
No, that's it, man. Other than thank you so much for listening, guys. If you're not already, please join the after party. That's where our community gets together and talks all thing film. Lately, there's been a lot of COVID-19 memes. So if you're all in the meme game, just jump right in there. And that's where we post teasers of what's to come here on Midnight Double Feature. Next week, because this episode is we actually skipped a week, and this episode is going to be released with our upcoming attractions episode this week as well. So you get 2 for the price of 1 this week. We're also going to be recording another episode next week, feature presentation. So that's going to be coming at you next week. What that movie is, if you want to find it out, it's going to be on the after party, hopefully tomorrow. So there you go.
I like how you spun our scheduling conflict as 2 for the price of 1. It's like raising your prices and then dropping everything and saying it's half off.
Yeah, I mean, look, all the financial markets are in crisis right now, so why not Midnight Double Feature?
Right. Hey, you're quarantined. We got 160 something episodes. Give us a listen. And guys, remember, we are doing the rating and review kind of contest right now. Get your reviews in. Send us a screenshot of them. Send us something, midnightdoublefeature@gmail.com with your name and a pick that you want, and would definitely be put into the running. If you've already done a review before, that's totally fine. Just send that one as well. And again, that's midnightdoublefeature@gmail.com. We're on Facebook at Midnight Double Feature. We're on Twitter at MDF Pod. Please stop by, even if you don't want to enter the contest for whatever reason, if you're a fucking weirdo. Stop by, rate and review us anyways. Check us out on iTunes. We're on Spotify. We're on YouTube. We're anywhere where you find most of your podcasts. And if you don't find us on somewhere, tell us so we can get on that shit. Zoheb, it was good talking about this. Goodbye. No, I'm just kidding. Guys, thanks so much for listening. We'll catch you next time. See you later.